Hi guys, welcome to Midnight Anime Library. Starting with Roger's Ghost, I command an Invincible Soul Army Part 5 Chapter 81, Encounter, the future world's greatest swordsman whoosh. The massive myriad soul ship seemed to have been kicked out of an interdimensional rift, and accompanied by a piercing screech that tore through the air, it slammed heavily onto the azure sea, kicking up monstrous waves. Boom! The hull sank sharply before being buoyed up by immense force, leaving everyone on deck tumbling about in a mess. Damn it! Shiki! Can you give a warning sound next time you land? Lin Yi had just climbed up from the deck and was brushing the dust off his backside when his peripheral vision suddenly caught something, causing him to freeze instantly. Not far away, on the calm, tranquil sea, a uniquely shaped little boat, resembling a coffin lid, was drifting quietly. On the boat, a man wearing a flashy floral shirt, sporting a pair of sexy mustaches, and possessing eyes as sharp as a hawk's, was holding an extremely bizarre pose. He was gripping a ridiculously huge cross-shaped black blade, with the edge submerged in the water. It looked like, was he rowing? At this moment, his cool, handsome face was facing the myriad soul ship that had descended from the sky, his expression stiff as if he had been petrified. Those hawk-like eyes were filled with the three philosophical questions. Who am I? Where am I? What was I just doing? The black blade Yoro suspended in midair still had a crystal-clear water droplet hanging from its tip, as if time itself had stopped at this very moment. On the deck, there was a deathly silence. Lin Yi, Roger, Shiki, Redfield, everyone's gaze was locked onto that man like searchlights. The air was filled with an aura of awkwardness. Hawkeye my hawk, being stared at by this group of uninvited guests, felt a rare flush of embarrassment creep onto his cheeks. Slowly, inch by inch, he pulled that supreme-grade sword out of the water, stiffly sheathed it behind his back, then nonchalantly crossed his legs and sat down, attempting to cover everything up with a cool expression. Unfortunately, it was too late. Jihahaha, cough cough. Golden Lion Shiki's signature laugh had only just started before he choked on it. I've roamed the seas for decades, and this is the first time I've seen someone rowing a boat with a sword. Hey! Kid, why'd you stop? Keep going. Why young man? Roger was amused too. He leaned against the ship's railing and laughed with his mouth wide open. Are you tired of rowing? Do you want to come aboard our ship for a cup of tea and a rest? Holy crap! Good grief! Lin Ye's eyes lit up, and he excitedly slapped his thigh. Hawkeye rowing a boat. A live one. This is a world-famous painting. His mind was already running wild with imagination. No wonder Don Krieg's grand fleet of 5,000 men was chased and slashed by him alone. He probably bumped into this guy's embarrassing rowing incident and wanted to silence him, right? Definitely. Redfield also revealed a rare smile. He could feel the incredibly astonishing sword intent hidden within the man before him. He was an out-and-out powerhouse. It's just, are the travel methods of powerhouses always this unique? Only Bullet had no interest in such fun. He walked to the stern of the ship on his own, lifted the anchor, and began his daily weighted squats, muttering, "Surpass Roger." Listening to the waves of teasing coming from the myriad soul ship, Hawkeye my hawk's eternally icy face finally couldn't hold up. He clenched his hands into fists, his knuckles turning white, and the veins on his forehead throbbed. This is too much. A surge of anger shot straight to his head. He suddenly looked up, his sharp gaze sweeping toward that massive ship like a blade, preparing to let these rude guys know what it means to say a swordsman cannot be insulted. Then, the expression on his face froze. That, the one. Laughing with his mouth wide open, isn't that the Pirate King Gold, Roger? The one next to him laughing like a villain, is that Golden Lion Shiki? And that one watching the show with a smile, the solitary Red, Patrick Redfield? And that newly risen four emperors who has recently become famous, with a bounty skyrocketing like a rocket, the demon emperor of 10,000 souls, Lin Yi? In an instant, Hawkeye's mind buzzed, and all his anger, awkwardness, and embarrassment were replaced by an indescribable ecstasy and impulse. Fighting spirit. A burning fighting spirit erupted from within him. Wasn't the very thing he had been traveling the world and bitterly searching for a worthy opponent who could force him to give his all and hone his swordsmanship? And now, a whole ship of legendary great swordsmen had appeared right before his eyes. How is this embarrassing? This is clearly a God-given surprise. Clang! Black blade Yoro unsheathed in response. The heavy blade felt as light as a feather in Hawkeye's hand. He slowly stood up, and an invisible sword pressure spread out, pressing the surrounding seawater down by a few inches. My name is Dracule Nighthawk. His voice was low and powerful, carrying a hint of trembling excitement. My goal is to be the world's greatest swordsman. Everyone, please accept my challenge. On the Myriad Soul ship, the teasing laughter stopped abruptly. Everyone could feel that pure and powerful fighting spirit, and the playfulness on their faces faded, replaced by a hint of appreciation. Ha ha ha. My hawk, is it? Lin Yi stepped out before anyone else could, a flamboyant smile on his face. Then let me be your opponent. As for these old guys, they aren't someone you can mess with right now. Hawkeye's sharp, hawk-like eyes stared fixedly at Lin Yi. He could, of course, tell that this young four emperors before him was also a swordsmanship expert with unfathomable depth. Good. He nodded concisely, agreeing. All right. Then let's find a place where we can let loose. Lin Yi tilted his chin toward Shiki and teased, Shiki, give this future world's greatest swordsman a hand, won't you? Otherwise, by the time he catches up to us using his sword to row, it'll be dark. Jihahaha. Kid Nighthawk, I'll give you a hand. Shiki laughed, his figure flashing onto Hawkeye's little boat, and he reached out to touch the hull. Under the lift of an invisible force, the coffin boat slowly floated up, following closely beside the Myriad Soul ship. Hawkeye! The fighting spirit that had just ignited was almost extinguished again by this sudden awkwardness. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he ultimately chose to use silence to deal with this group of unserious people. Before long, Redfield's voice rang out. To the front left, there is an uninhabited island. The observation hockey, strengthened by the rumble fruit, had an outrageously wide range. Let's go! The two ships, one after the other, turned into two streaks of light and sped toward that uninhabited island. On the island, the beach was soft. Hawkeye leaped off the small boat first, his toes lightly touching the sand without making a sound. Lin Yi followed closely behind, taking a step that kicked up a few grains of sand. Roger, Shiki, and the others stood far away on the deck of the Myriad Soul ship, striking a pose ready to watch the show. Hawkeye stared intently at Lin Yi, and when he saw the blade Lin Yi drew from his waist, his brows furrowed imperceptibly. What he held in his hand was the black blade Yoru, one of the 12 supreme-grade swords. But Lin Yi's sword was just an unremarkable Raya-grade sword. The strong make the blade, not the blade the strong. Lin Yi seemed to see through his thoughts and smiled faintly, his tone carrying a touch of unfathomable mystery. A true powerhouse, even holding a withered blade of grass, can swing out peerless sword intent. Why be constrained by external objects? Upon hearing this, a flash of surprise and approval crossed Hawkeye's eyes, and he nodded solemnly. How could he know that Lin Yi's true thoughts at this moment were, damn, it feels so good to act cool. If it weren't for the fact that my Shikasaiken hasn't arrived yet, who the hell wouldn't want to use a good sword? If you have a supreme-grade sword, even a dog wouldn't use a Raya-grade sword. The atmosphere became heavy at this moment. Suddenly, Hawkeye moved. Without the slightest warning, the black blade Yoru in his hand swung from bottom to top, casually. Swish! A green sword intent, condensed to the extreme, seemed to cut through space and, with zero-frame startup speed, slashed instantly toward Lin Yi. Lin Yi's pupils constricted, almost as an instinctive reaction, the Raya-grade sword in his hand slashed out as well. Swish! An equally domineering and peerless sword intent broke through the air and met it head-on. Lin Yi silently complained in his heart, very good, you don't shout the move name, and I won't either. As long as we don't shout, it's all basic attacks. This level of pretentiousness absolutely cannot fall behind. The next second, the two terrifying slashes collided with a boom in mid-air. Chapter 82, After the Great Battle, a Banquet. Boom! Two sword energies, completely different in nature but equally domineering, were like two out-of-control ancient behemoths, crashing violently into each other. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The air was torn apart, letting out a tooth-aching wail, and the surrounding space seemed to ripple like water. Neither would submit, and neither would yield an inch. The stalemate lasted only for a fleeting moment. Finally, after exhausting the last bit of their momentum, the two sword energies exploded with a bang, dissipating together into nothingness. Before the violent air currents could settle, Hawkeye moved. Holding the black blade, Yoru, his figure flashed, pouncing straight for Linya's face like a specter. That heavy blade was as fast as lightning in his hand, cleaving down from above. Linya's pupils constricted. Without dodging or evading, he boldly parried upward with the blade in his hand. Clang! A deafening clash of metal on metal. The two blades, wrapped in powerful armament haki, pressed hard against each other in another test of strength. Dazzling sparks burst frantically before their eyes, reflecting the blazing battle intent in each other's pupils. Get off me! Linyi gave a low shout and suddenly exerted force to push Hawkeye away. With a turn of his wrist, he delivered a horizontal slash, aiming straight for Hawkeye's abdomen. Hawkeye's reaction was incredibly fast. With a twist of his waist, he dodged by a hair's breadth. Then, with a tap of his toes, his body spun, and Black Blade, Yoru counterattacked swiftly with the sound of breaking wind. And so, they went back and forth, blades flashing and swords shadows dancing. The two constantly traded moves and countered them. Every strike was so fast it was dazzling, and every hit contained enough power to split mountains and crack stones. The overflowing sword energy became the most terrifying disaster on this deserted island. The ground looked as if it had been scraped by countless invisible razors, cut perfectly flat. Great rocks and trees turned to dust the moment they touched the sword energy, smoke and dust rose everywhere, and the sword intent was chilling. Some unlucky fierce beasts that weren't far enough away didn't even have time to fully escape the battlefield of these two monsters before being decapitated by the invisible air blades, their blood staining the earth red. Rumble! Rumble, rumble! On the field, the black-red lightning generated by the clash of haki danced like wild dragons, making the entire island rumble. The buzzing sound of the blades clashing was sharp and piercing. Linyi grew more alarmed and more frustrated as the fight went on. Looking at Hawkeye's sword energy, which grew sharper and more cunning with every strike, he felt incredibly stifled in his heart. Damn it, just shout something. Are your normal attacks always this strong? Or is Hawkeye actually an extreme closet case who recites all his cool move names in his head but just won't open his mouth? The strength of the two was actually somewhat evenly matched. And so, they went back and forth as the sun rose and the moon set. The battle lasted for a full 2 days and 2 nights. This unlucky deserted island had been devastated beyond recognition, as if it had been plowed by a meteor shower. Even on the surrounding sea surface, many corpses of sea beasts floated, all of them collateral damage from the sword energy of the two men. Huff! Huff! Hawkeye's hand holding the black blade trembled slightly, and his breathing began to quicken. His hawk-like eyes stared fixedly at Linyi opposite him, his gaze filled with disbelief. This guy is simply a monster. After releasing so much sword energy and haki, and maintaining high-intensity combat for 2 days and 2 nights, he still acted like nothing had happened. His breathing was steady, and not a single drop of sweat could be seen. Linyi looked at Hawkeye's expression as if he had seen a ghost and was overjoyed in his heart. Junior, he thought proudly, playing a war of attrition with me? I can wear you down for 10 days and 10 nights. No joke. When he broke through to the admiral level, his strength had improved by a whole notch across the board. Not to mention he had refined countless giant sea kings before, his strength and stamina were already startlingly good. Hawkeye looked at Linyi with burning eyes, took a deep breath, and his gaze became firm again. Immediately, he held Black Blade, Yoru horizontally across his chest, and an armament haki more powerful and condensed than any before frantically wrapped around the blade. His momentum was climbing frantically. Linyi looked at the serious Hawkeye and the powerful momentum he was gathering, and his eyes instantly lit up. Oh ho! Going to use a big move? He waited expectantly, pricking up his ears, wanting to hear what kind of domineering name Hawkeye would give to this world-shattering move. Only to hear Hawkeye's gaze turn cold as he shouted in his cool, low voice, downward slash. Ha! The expectation on Lin Yi's face instantly froze. He picked his ear with a face full of question marks, wondering if he had heard wrong. This downward slash? It's just called downward slash? For such a powerful move, you gave it such a plain and unadorned name? Lin Yi was speechless, feeling as if the 2 days of expectation he had built up had all been fed to the dogs. I think I understand. No wonder this guy never shouts out move names. It's not that he's a closet case, he's just really bad at naming things. When he takes Zoro as a disciple later, he probably wants to steal his disciples' move names. Complaints aside, Lin Yi didn't dare to be the least bit negligent with his movements. Although the name of this move wasn't great, the aggressive pressure was the real deal. Come at me. Lin Yi laughed loudly, and the blade in his hand also began to charge up. Azura, Karma Fire. He suddenly swung his blade, and a crimson sword energy, seemingly burning with the fires of hell, shot through the air. Above the sword energy, countless ghosts scorched by the red lotus karma fire were fatally attached, letting out silent wails as if they wanted to drag everything before them into hell. Hawkeye's thick green sword energy collided violently with this crimson karma fire sword energy. Boom! The clouds in the sky were instantly torn to shreds by these two powerful attacks. The red and green sword energies constantly clashed, eroded, and annihilated each other. However, in the end, Lin Yi gained the upper hand. The crimson sword energy forcefully shattered the green sword energy. Although its power was weakened after they shattering, its residual force remained undiminished as it slashed straight toward Hawkeye. Hawkeye's pupils constricted. Without time to think, he swung out several more sword energies before he could barely manage to completely destroy that crimson sword energy. He stood in place, his arm holding the sword already numb, his chest heaving violently. He knew that there was no point in continuing the fight. I lost. Hawkeye slowly sheathed his sword, his voice somewhat raspy but exceptionally calm. Ha ha ha. Lin Yi put away his sword and laughed happily. My Hawk, you're still young. In the future, you will definitely become the world's greatest swordsman. On the Myriad Souls ship, Shiki, Roger, and the others also flew over, offering words of comfort one after another. Yeah ha ha ha. Kid, your strength is quite something. Your swordsmanship is very solid, not bad. Roger patted Hawkeye's shoulder, his eyes full of appreciation. Listening to the comfort of these legendary seniors, Hawkeye's eyes, which had dimmed slightly due to defeat, reignited with fire. Yes. He nodded solemnly. I will continue to polish my swordsmanship in the future. One day, I will definitely surpass all of you seniors. Good. That's the spirit. Lin Yi laughed and patted his shoulder again, then waved his hand and shouted to everyone, banquet time. Welcome the future world's greatest swordsman, Mihawk, as our guest. Oh. The Elite Five had long been prepared. Upon hearing this, they immediately brought out the specialties they had brought from Sky Island. Drinks, gourmet food, and fruits emitting exotic fragrances were spread out across the beach. Everyone raised their wine glasses high, directly starting this unique banquet. Chapter 83, Inviting Hawkeye to Join. The bonfire on the beach crackled and popped, the aroma of roasted meat mingling with the mellow scent of rum, drifting far away on the sea breeze. The atmosphere of the banquet was in full swing. Gulp, gulp, gulp. Hawkeye Mihawk tilted his head back and downed a large gulp of rum, then casually reached into the pile of fruit beside him and picked one up, preparing to put it in his mouth. Suddenly, his movement paused. The tactile sensation in his hand wasn't right. It wasn't the smoothness a normal fruit should have, instead, it had a rough, eerie spiral texture. He looked closely, a hint of surprise flashing in those hawk-like eyes. This thing was clearly a devil fruit. His expression remained unchanged as he held the fruit up in front of Lin Yi, saying calmly, "Is this how your 10,000 souls pirates treat guests? Directly serving devil fruits to your visitors." Put. The wine Lin Yi had just gulped down was sprayed out in a spectacular mist, not a single drop remaining. Holy crap! Cough, cough. This is a devil fruit? His face turned red from choking as he pointed at the thing in Hawkeye's hand, his eyes nearly popping out. Where did it come from? Hawkeye gave it a casual toss, throwing the fruit to Lin Yi. I picked it from that pile of fruit. With a buzz, everyone's attention was drawn over. A devil fruit? Where did it come from? Was it brought down from Sky Island? What kind of ability is it? Roger and Shiki also leaned in, looking it over with curious faces. Lin Yi turned the fruit over and over. The skin was deep purple and covered in eerie spiral patterns, but he couldn't figure it out for the life of him. Does anyone recognize what devil fruit this is? He asked loudly. All the souls shook their heads, indicating they had never heard of it. All right then, Lin Yi curled his lip and casually stowed away this unexpected windfall. I'll identify it later once I get my hands on a devil fruit encyclopedia. He clapped his hands and raised his glass again. The banquet's atmosphere couldn't be interrupted. Speaking of which, my hawk, why didn't you eat it? Lin Yi winked at Hawkeye, smiling with ill intent. I really wanted to see what you'd look like after eating a devil fruit, ha ha ha. Hawkeye took another sip of wine and shook his head, his tone firm. The path I follow is the pure path of the swordsman. I will not eat a devil fruit. Fine, how boring. Lin Yi smacked his lips, then shifted the conversation, leaning forward with a tempting tone in his voice. I say, my hawk, do you want to join my ship? Look, Lin Yi extended his fingers, counting them off. Me, Roger, Shiki, and Redfield are all great swordsmen, that's 4 already. And in the future, there will be even more. His voice was full of allure. You want to hone your swordsmanship and become the world's #1. Here with me, you have so many top-tier great swordsmen to act as your sparring partners. In just a few years, your goal can be realized. Isn't that better than sailing around the world on a coffin board looking for people to fight by yourself? Listening to Lin Yi's invitation, Hawkeye's fingers tightened slightly around his wineglass. He was tempted. Over the years, aside from occasionally sparring with that red-haired Shanks, he hadn't encountered an opponent who could truly satisfy him for a long time. And on this ship before him, the legends of an entire era were gathered. Lin Yi saw the rare hesitation on Hawkeye's ice-cold face and curled his lips, dropping another bombshell. Furthermore, we are planning to invite the previous world's greatest swordsman to join us. Hawkeye's pupils contracted instantly. How about it, why don't you come along and see? As for whether to join us, you can think it over carefully. Hawkeye looked at Lin Yi in shock, his voice slightly unsteady. The previous world's greatest swordsman? Yes. Lin Yi said flatly, as if speaking of a trivial matter. The legendary dragon-slaying samurai, the god of the blade, Ryuma Shimatsuki. He glanced at the supreme-grade black blade, Yoro, on Hawkeye's back, which had been polished to a dark sheen, and continued to up the ante. His sword is also a black blade. One of the 21 great grade swords, Black Blade Shisui. So, do you want to go take a look together? How is that possible? Hawkeye was shaken out of his composure by the shocking information contained in those plain words. That dragon-slaying samurai passed away long ago, didn't he? He's buried in Wano country. Ha ha ha. Lin Yi laughed loudly, pointing to himself and then to the Roger and Shiki beside him. Don't you see these few beside me? My fruit ability can bring the souls of the deceased back to the world. He lowered his voice, like a devil sharing a secret, and let me tell you another secret. His remains are currently not in Wano country. They were stolen long ago by that Shichibukai, Gecko Mariah. They should be on the thriller bark in the Devil's Triangle now. Hawkeye's pupils shook. Although he had heard rumors of the 10,000 Souls pirates' eerie abilities in the newspapers, when the facts were laid out vividly before his eyes, when those figures who only existed in legends were laughing and drinking with him, the impact was beyond anything words could describe. To be able to cross blades with the legendary god of the blade, Ryuma Shimatsuki. This thought, like a bolt of lightning, instantly ignited all the fighting spirit and desire in his heart. Hawkeye stood up abruptly, a light never seen before bursting from those sharp eyes. Fine, I'll go with you. Ha ha ha. Good. Then we go together. Lin Yi laughed triumphantly, his inner abacus clicking away. Little guy, once you're on my ship, do you think I'll let you run away? When the time comes, with a group of top-tier great swordsmen surrounding you, it'll be like a group of gorgeous beauties flaunting themselves around Sanji. I don't believe you'll be able to hold back. Ha ha ha. Come. Let's keep drinking. Lin Yi and Hawkeye clinked their glasses heavily, and the two of them tilted their heads back and continued to drink with a gulp, gulp. Gulp. The night grew deep. The clamor of the banquet gradually subsided, leaving only the occasional crackle of the bonfire and the rhythmic lapping of waves against the beach. Hawkeye lay on the sand, eyes open, not feeling sleepy at all. His mind was filled with Ryuma Shimatsuki and Black Blade Shusui. That anticipation for the supreme path of the sword made it impossible for his mind to settle down. Swish! He stood up abruptly, drew the black blade, Yoru, and began to practice under the moonlight. Swinging the blade, sheathing the blade, the most basic swordsmanship movements, yet he performed them meticulously, as standard as a textbook. And not far away, another figure was also practicing through the night. Who else could it be but Bullet? He was shirtless, his muscles knotted, continuously punching the air, practicing hockey and developing his fruit abilities. After hockey, practice the fruit, he muttered, sweat soaking the deck. Finish yours, then practice yours. Hawkeye seemed to be infected by that crazed drive, his blade swings became even faster and more precise. Lin Yi leaned against the ship's railing, watching these two overachievers, his teeth aching. Turning his head, he saw Golden Lion Shiki nearby, snoring like thunder and sleeping like a dead pig, and he couldn't help but get angry. He walked over and slapped Shiki hard on the back of the head. How can you sleep at your age? Lin Yi hissed in anger. This is the age for striving, yet all you know is sleep. Why can't you learn from Bullet? With you like this, you still want to defeat Roger? Roar! Who? Shiki was jolted awake by that slap. In his days, he didn't hear Lin Yi's nonsensical rant clearly, and with his messy golden hair, he was about to lose his temper. Oh Shiki, my good Shiki. Seeing that things weren't right, Lin Yi immediately switched to a fawning smile and gently stroked Shiki's back. You must have had a nightmare. It's okay, it's okay. Go back to sleep, go. Back to sleep. The movement was as gentle as coaxing a disobedient cat. Shiki was drunk and his brain was still a mess. Soothed like this, he actually yawned again and lay back down. Not far away, Hawkeye watched this absurd scene, his mouth twitching violently. How has this guy survived until now? Chapter 84. Dealing with Doflamingo. The next morning, the waves gently lapped at the shore, bringing a salty yet refreshing breeze that felt quite pleasant. Lin Yi let out a long stretch, his joints popping with a series of crisp cracks that left him feeling completely relaxed. He prepared to head over to the campfire to find something to eat. There should be plenty of leftover roast meat from last night. Not far away, Roger, Shiki, and the others were also waking up one after another. Hiss. A sharp intake of breath successfully caught everyone's attention. Golden Lion Shiki was seen grimacing as he rubbed the back of his head and neck, his face a mask of pain. Didn't sleep well yesterday? Did I get a stiff neck? He muttered to himself, then shook his head. No, that's not right. My sleeping posture is so good, how could I get a stiff neck? He shifted positions and continued rubbing. Did I hit a rock? That's even more unlikely. With this soul body, what else could hurt me besides a hockey attack? Unless... Shiki's suspicious eyes, filled with a cold, scrutinizing light, slowly landed on Lin Yi, who was busy stretching with his back turned. Lin Yi instantly felt a chill down his spine, as if he were being watched by a predator. Feeling guilty, he didn't dare turn around. He could only continue pretending to stretch his limbs before turning and quietly shuffling toward the food. It wasn't him? Shiki frowned, lost in thought. But if it was a hockey attack, with my alertness, how could I not have noticed? The only one here who can directly touch our souls is Lin Yi, that soul-type fruit user. He really couldn't figure it out. Shiki simply stood up and strode toward Lin Yi with large steps. Hey! Lin Yi, kid! His loud voice echoed across the quiet beach. Did you do anything to me last night? Huh? Lin Yi turned around with a look of innocent confusion, holding a skewer of grilled fish and frantically fanning himself with his hand. Do what? I don't know what you're talking about. Shiki stared at him suspiciously. Are you hot? Lin Yi's fanning hand froze. He immediately put it down, gave a dry laugh, and shook his head while looking away. Ha? No, not hot at all. You seem very awkward? Shiki pressed further. Ah, not awkward, not awkward. Lin Yi waved his hand again, his eyes darting around everywhere except at Shiki. Just as Shiki was about to continue questioning him to catch the guilty kid in a lie, a figure came running over in a hurry. Boss, Doflamingo has contacted us. Number 1 of the Elite 5 shouted breathlessly, holding up a pink transponder snail. He's here. As if granted a grand pardon, Lin Yi dropped the grilled fish and lunged forward. He snatched the transponder snail from number 1's hand so fast he left after images. He took a deep breath and connected the call. Gotcha. The transponder snail's expression instantly became arrogant and distorted, its mouth curling into an exaggerated arc as an angry voice came through. Demon Emperor of 10,000 souls, Lin Yi? I wasn't aware we had any friendship. What you did to me and my family last time hasn't been forgotten. Yesterday, Lin Yi had unexpectedly obtained an unknown devil fruit among Hawkeye's gifts, which gave him the idea to get a devil fruit encyclopedia. Looking at the entire ocean, the underworld broker with the widest connections and deepest background was none other than Doflamingo. That's why he had the Elite 5 find a way to contact this joker through the black market. Haha, don't be so angry, Doffy. Lin Yi leaned against a coconut tree, his tone flippant. The last incident was all a misunderstanding. I was ready to have a good trade with you, but who knew you'd be so stubborn and insist on seeking revenge for your family? He paused and added a jab, and then getting treated like a speed bump by Bullet, who else can you blame for that? The breathing on the other end of the transponder snail grew noticeably heavier. Although Doflamingo didn't understand what a speed bump was, he could clearly feel the undisguised ridicule and mockery in Lin Yi's tone. So, what exactly do you want from me? He suppressed his rage, squeezing the words through his teeth. He had no choice, the situation was out of his control. The Lin Yi before him was a genuine, world-renowned new four emperors, an existence he absolutely couldn't afford to provoke. Ah, well, I heard you have wide connections, Lin Yi spoke lazily. I want a devil fruit encyclopedia from you. Of course, that's just a side request, the main point is that I want to do a long-term business deal with you. A devil fruit encyclopedia? Fine. Doflamingo's tone carried a hint of caution. What can you offer in exchange? Gold. Lots and lots of gold. Lin Yi laughed. But this gold isn't for the encyclopedia, it's for our upcoming big business. As for that encyclopedia, just consider it a bonus and give it to me for free. What? Doflamingo's volume suddenly spiked. Are you joking? Why on earth would I give it to you for free? Oh, what's the rush? Lin Yi said unhurriedly. Don't you want to ask what kind of business I want to do with you? What business? Devil fruits, and the corpses of the strong. Lin Yi said each word deliberately. There was a moment of silence on the other end before Doflamingo's voice rang out again, filled with confusion. Ha! The corpses of the strong, I can roughly understand, after all, your devil fruit ability is so powerful it makes people envious. But why devil fruits? You're already an ability user, and those guys on your ship, they're all souls, right? Can they even eat devil fruits? Ha, you don't need to know too much about that. Lin Yi gave a mysterious smile. You just need to know that I currently have countless amounts of gold. You just be responsible for helping me collect the corpses of the strong and devil fruits. He cleared his throat and began listing prices. For pirates, I don't want anyone with a bounty lower than 10 million. For those above 10 million, I'll give you a price with 1 zero removed. For example, for a corpse with a 10 million bounty, I'll give you 1 million berries, for 100 million bounty, I'll give you 10 million berries. And so on. For Marines, I don't want anyone below the rank of commissioned officer. A major is 1 million, a lieutenant colonel is 2 million, a rear admiral is 10 million, a vice admiral is 50 million, as for an admiral, flat price, 300 million. I'll take as many as you have. Devil fruits, ordinary Zoan and Paramecia types are 100 million berries each. Ancient species, 200 million. For others with powerful abilities, like mythical Zoans, Logias, or special Paramecias, I'll give you a separate quote. There is no upper limit for any of them. Linya's voice was full of the arrogance of someone who was filthy rich. If he ran out, he could just go back to Sky Island and haul more gold, there was plenty there anyway. The 10,000 Souls Pirates, how could it be called that with only a few members? He had to build a truly massive fleet at the 10,000 Souls level. Lin Yi calculated in his mind. On the other end of the line, Doflamingo's breathing had stopped as he listened. No upper limit? What kind of concept was this? Devil fruits were hard to find, but the corpses of the strong, in this new world where people died every day, were they hard to find? With pirate groups of all sizes clashing, so-called strong men fell every day. For him, this was a business with zero overhead. Fa-fa-few-few. Fa-fa-fa-few-foo. That signature wicked and delighted smile reappeared on the transponder snail's face. Doflamingo's attitude instantly did a 180-degree turn. Good deal, he said excitedly. As soon as I get the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia, I'll immediately send someone to deliver it to you. At that time, I'll ask Lord Lin Yi to pay a small deposit first, so I can go find the goods for you. Fa-fa-few-few, no problem, Lin Yi agreed readily. Then I'll wait for your news, Kacha. Hanging up the transponder snail, Lin Yi was in a great mood. He called out to the others who were still dazed. Are you all full? Once you're done eating, it's time for us to set off. He looked toward the distant sea with burning eyes, a determined smile playing on his lips. Target Devil's Triangle. Chapter 85, An Invitation from the Big Mom Pirates Rumble. A thick bolt of lightning, like a spear hurled by a god, struck the pitch-black sea not far from the Myriad Souls ship, kicking up a towering pillar of water as arcs of electricity crackled and darted through the waves. On the deck, Lin Yi let out a lazy yawn and called out to Ride, who was resting with his eyes closed by the railing. Ride, I say, how many waves has this been already? He extended a finger and poked the air listlessly. Have these pirates had their brains eaten by sea kings? They're so stubborn, they don't even have the right to get near our ship, yet they dare to come after the great treasure? Ever since they left that uninhabited island, their route to the Devil's Triangle had been like poking a nest of reckless fools. Every few days, some overconfident pirate crew would charge at them, howling about capturing Roger to find out the location of the One Piece. At first, Lin Yi found it quite novel, but later, it became pure numbness. Redfield didn't even lift an eyelid, he simply extended a finger and made a light hooking motion toward the distance. ZZZZT electric light flared over the sea as a massive cage woven from lightning appeared out of thin air, slowly floating toward the Myriad Soul ship. Inside the cage, over 100 translucent souls of small fry pirates were huddled together, letting out silent shrieks and struggling in vain. But as soon as they touched the edge of the lightning cage, they were violently repelled by the rampaging electrical power. Their soul forms dimmed instantly with a soft p't sound, as if they were being scorched. Lightning, a power of pure yang and vigor, was practically the natural enemy of these spirits. Redfield was becoming increasingly proficient with this routine. Within the range of the electromagnetic wave sensing developed from his rumble fruit ability, nothing could escape his notice. While those pirates were still miles away discussing how to hijack the ship, they were sent to meet the sea god by a long-range lightning strike. Kill, lock the soul, and then package them in a lightning cage to be delivered to Lin Yi. A complete one-stop service, incredibly thorough. Lin Yi raised his hand half-heartedly, and the phantom of the 10,000 souls banner flashed briefly, sucking in all the souls from the lightning cage. Sigh. He let out a sigh. Even a mosquito's leg is still meat. Unfortunately, the quality of these pirates from the first half of the Grand Line was simply too poor, their energy was too chaotic even to be used as nourishment. Jia ha ha ha. Golden Lion Shiki leaned against the mast, took a large gulp of wine, and laughed loudly. Kid, if you find it troublesome, why not just fly over? I could get this ship there in half a day. Where's the fun in that? Lin Yi rolled his eyes. We finally got such a flashy pirate ship. If we don't sail on the sea, feel the ocean breeze, and do some fishing, where's the sense of adventure? Hawkeye Myhawk sat to the side, meticulously wiping his black blade, Yora with a white cloth. Hearing this, the corner of his mouth twitched imperceptibly, as if in slight agreement. Just then, Redfield, who had been keeping his eyes closed, suddenly opened them. "Someone decent is coming." His voice was as flat as ever, yet it caused the relaxed atmosphere on the deck to tighten. "Oh?" Lin Yi perked up and leaned in. "What's their background?" "The ship is very strange, like, it's made of candy and biscuits," Redfield described. "The person on board is one of the Sweet Four generals under the Four Emperors' Big Mom Charlotte Linlin, Charlotte Katakuri." As soon as he finished speaking, Shiki's signature laughter rang out again. "Jia ha ha ha. What did that old hag send someone here for?" He had a playful look on his face as he sized Lin Yi up. "Lin Yi, kid, it couldn't be that the old woman Linlin has taken a liking to you and wants to have a child with you, could it?" The smile on Lin Yi's face froze instantly, and he felt completely unwell. His mind immediately flashed to Big Mom's massive frame and her drooling, gluttonous appearance. Holy crap! Come to think of it, that old hag really does love finding all sorts of powerful individuals and unique races to marry and have children with to expand her Tatoland. He was now a newly risen Four Emperor, powerful and handsome. He really was her damn ideal target. Damn it! Lin Yi stood up abruptly, his knuckles cracking. A surge of anger rushed to his head. Let him come. I want to see what he wants. If that's really the case, then that old hag's most capable son won't be leaving today. A man can be killed, but not insulted. Ah, don't worry. Roger leaned against the railing, thoroughly amused by Lin Yi's look of facing a great enemy. Linlin isn't that brainless. She wouldn't dare provoke us right now. At most, she wants an alliance through marriage, probably marrying off a daughter to you. Lin Yi thought of Big Mom's bizarre daughters and shook his head vigorously. I only want to focus on my career right now, he said with a righteous and impassioned expression. With my great cause unfulfilled, how could I dare to dally in matters of the heart? At this point, his tone shifted, and a lewd, foolish grin appeared on his face as he lowered his voice and added with a chuckle, once I become the master of the world, I'll start a harem then, he the Empress, Nami, and Robin. I'll take them all, every single one. He rubbed his hands together as he spoke, drool almost leaking out. Beside him, Roger silently shifted his seat, moving a bit further away, fearing that this silliness might be contagious. Before long, a ship with a design so peculiar it made one's teeth ache approached slowly. The hull looked like it was pieced together from giant wafers, the sails were shaped like ice cream cones, and even the ram on the bow was a massive chocolate bar. A cloyingly sweet aroma kept wafting into their noses even from a distance. A tall, upright figure stood at the bow, a scarf covering half his face, but that steady yet sharp aura of a powerhouse was impossible to hide. Is that the 10,000 Souls pirates of the Demon Emperor of 10,000 Souls Lin Yi ahead? The voice carried over the waves, clear and powerful. I am Charlotte Katakuri, one of the Sweet Four generals of the Big Mom pirates. On the deck, number one of the Elite Five stepped forward and replied with a booming voice, it is. Why has the Big Mom pirates of the New World come looking for our captain? Katakuri's gaze fell on number one, his eyes narrowing slightly. Such a condensed aura. The newspapers were right, the core members of this Lin Yi's pirate crew really are all souls. He took a deep breath and called out loudly again, I am here on Mama's orders to deliver an invitation. Mama wishes to invite Captain Lin Yi to attend her tea party. Hearing this, number one turned to look at Lin Yi, who was resting with his eyes closed on the lounge chair. Lin Yi didn't even open his eyes, he just lazily raised a hand. Understanding the signal, number one shouted. To Katakuri's ship, then come aboard. Katakuri nodded, and the deck beneath his feet instantly transformed into a mochi-like fluid that enveloped him. Like a boneless mochi man, he floated lightly across the sea and landed steadily on the deck of the Myriad Soul ship. Chapter 86, Katakuri's Shock Hum. The moment he landed, Katakuri's expression changed. 1, 2, 3. Several powerful auras, so intense they almost suffocated him, crashed down from all directions like several invisible mountains. His observation haki screamed in warning, and his head felt like a beehive was stuffed inside, buzzing incessantly. What was that? That man with a cigar in his mouth and golden hair as wild as a lion's mane, it was Golden Lion Shiki. The one wearing a red cape, smiling brightly yet feeling even more dangerous than Mama, it was the Pirate King Geoldia Roger. And that aloof man with gloomy eyes, Red Count Redfield, and that man with bulging muscles and an aura as violent as a humanoid beast, Demon Air Douglas Bullet. This. Katakuri felt the back of his neck instantly drenched in cold sweat. The descriptions in the newspapers were a joke compared to the impact of seeing them in person. These monsters, who only existed in legends, were actually standing here alive. The aura of each one was not at all inferior to Mama's. His gaze swept over the other two. The man with the black blade on his back and eyes as sharp as a hawk's was the recently famous great swordsman Hawkeye, and the young man sitting in the chair, looking the most harmless, was the Demon Emperor of 10,000 Souls, Lin Yi. Although the auras of these two were slightly inferior to those legends, they were definitely monster level. No. I must calm down. I represent the face of the big MOM pirates. Katakuri forcibly suppressed the stormy waves in his heart, straightened his back, and walked toward Lin Yi. Captain Lin Yi. He bowed slightly and took out an exquisite invitation from his robe. Our big mom pirates sincerely invite you to Mama's tea party. We hope you will grace us with your presence. This is the invitation, please accept it. Number 1 stepped forward to take the invitation and was about to hand it to Lin Yi. Wait. Lin Yi finally opened his eyes. He didn't look at the invitation, instead, he stared at Katakuri with interest, a playful smile curling at the corner of his mouth. Your mama, is she really just inviting me to a tea party? He asked slowly. No other intentions? Thump, Katakuri's heart sank abruptly. He was nervous. He was suddenly very nervous. How could he, as her son, not know Mama's intentions? Hosting a tea party specifically for a newly appointed 4 emperors, the purpose was obvious, she must want to recruit him. And Mama's method of recruiting the strong was, of course, marriage. But look at what kind of monsters are on this ship. Not to mention those legends, even Lin Yi himself was an extremely powerful guy. Would he be willing to become the son-in-law of another of the 4 emperors? This was simply an insult to the dignity of the strong. If the talk failed and a war broke out on the spot. Katakuri's observation haki seemed to have already foreseen the future where his Tatoland was torn into biscuit crumbs. No. Absolutely not. Yes. His thoughts raced in a flash, and Katakuri spoke decisively, his tone incredibly sincere. We simply saw that you could gather so many legendary seniors together and head-on defeat the Marines' Buster Call. Your style is greatly admired by Mama. Therefore, she wants to invite you to a gathering, and that's all. When I go back, I must persuade Mama to give up that stupid idea. In this tea party, just getting a little closer to the 10,000 Souls pirates would already be a massive success. Katakuri screamed frantically in his heart. Oh? Is that so? Lin Yi prolonged his tone, then turned his head to look at Shiki and Roger, who were holding back their laughter, and shrugged. Did you hear that? He said with an innocent face. They just purely admire my personal charm and want to treat me to a meal. How could it be as filthy as you guys thought? Having kids? Marriage? Can't your thoughts be a bit more pure? Pfft. Hearing this, Katakuri almost spat out a mouthful of old blood, and his heart skipped a beat. How did they know Mama's goal? Fortunately, I reacted fast enough, otherwise, there's a high probability I wouldn't be able to go back and see my cute younger siblings today. Katakuri calmly raised his hand and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Just then, he seemed to feel a playful gaze fall on him. His powerful observation haki immediately tried to find the source. Was it that Red Count, Redfield? He was startled and instinctively looked over, only to find the other party was just drinking wine as if nothing had happened. An illusion? All right, I understand. Lin Yi waved his hand, interrupting his thoughts. Go back and tell your mama that when I have time, I will pay a visit. He paused and added, "Of course, I will notify you when I am free." Phew! Katakuri felt relieved, as if the mountains pressing down on him were suddenly removed. "All right, Captain Lin Yi," he immediately replied. "We will await your and the legendary senior's arrival at any time." After speaking, he didn't want to stay for another second. He turned and left, his pace so fast he was almost flying. "Why are you running so fast?" Lin Yi teased slowly behind him as he watched his panicking back. "I won't eat you, you mochi rice cake." Once Katakuri's ship disappeared from sight, Shiki approached with a teasing look. "Jihahaha. Why did you actually agree?" He nudged Lin Yi with his elbow. "Going to that old hag's tea party, aren't you afraid she'll really pin you down to have kids?" "She dares." Lin Yi instantly bristled. "With you guys around, if she dares to say the word have, I'll turn her iron balloon into a hydrogen balloon and blow it up." He grumbled for a while, then chuckled. "I just want to go and see her Tato land. I heard everything there is made of desserts, even the houses. When you wake up hungry, you can just bite a piece off the wall." "Ha ha ha. That's so interesting, I have to go check it out." Of course, there was an even more important reason. Big Mom's Soul Fruit and his 10,000 Souls banner had many similarities in their abilities. He wanted to observe closely to see if he could gain some insight and find a chance to awaken the 10,000 Souls banner. Lin Yi imagined his heroic posture after his fruit awakened, punching Nika Luffy, kicking Emu behind the scenes, going on a killing spree, simply wonderful. Just as he was immersed in his dream, the lookout, number 5, suddenly cried out, "Boss! Thick fog ahead!" Lin Yi snapped out of it and looked up. At some point, the front of the Myriad Soul ship had been enveloped by a dense, eerie mist that wouldn't dissipate. The sunlight was blocked out, the air instantly became cold and damp, and visibility was terrifyingly low. The Devil's Triangle had finally arrived. Chapter 87, The Reunion of Redfield and his childhood idol. Whoosh, the bow of the Myriad Soul ship, like a pitch-black sharp blade, cleaved through the churning thick fog. The moment the hull entered, the surrounding light seemed to be swallowed by an invisible giant beast, suddenly plunging into darkness. Cold, damp air rushed toward them, carrying a musty, rotten smell that clung stickily to the skin, making one feel very uncomfortable. The visibility was frighteningly low, 10 meters ahead was nothing but chaos, and even the sound of the waves became dull and eerie, as if coming from another world. "TSK, this damn place," Lin Yi rubbed his arms, feeling goosebumps rise. "Guler, is the route okay?" At the helm, an aged soul shadow nodded slightly, his voice carrying a sense of heaviness. "Don't worry, Captain, we have entered the core area of the Devil's Triangle, the airflow is stable." The atmosphere on the deck was heavy. The Elite Five were all on guard, gripping the weapons at their waists. Lin Yi, however, acted as if nothing was wrong, strolling over to the ship's side and leaning against Redfield, who was resting with his eyes closed, and nudged him with his elbow. "Speaking of which, Ride, your childhood idol is also here." The voice was not loud, but it was like a pebble thrown into a calm lake. Redfield was somewhat surprised. "My idol?" Lin Yi chuckled, revealing a row of white teeth, and lowered his voice as if sharing some earth-shattering secret. "That's right, the Rumbar Pirates. Humming Brook." Hum. Redfield's body jolted violently. Those eyes, which had always been calm, opened instantly, and his blood-red pupils were filled with disbelief. Humming Brook. This name, like a rusty key, violently pried open a childhood memory buried in the deepest part of his mind. When he was still a kid, that man who always played the violin and sported an exaggerated afro had once smiled and told him about the vastness of the ocean, and about the promises and ideals of traveling around the world with his companions. It was that brief encounter that planted a seed called freedom in his heart, which eventually took root and sprouted, prompting him to resolutely set sail when he grew up. Is he still alive?" Redfield's voice trembled. The usually elegant and reserved Red Earl was now like a flustered kid, grabbing Lin Yi's arm and eagerly asking, or rather, "Is his corpse buried in this sea?" "Ah, don't get excited, don't get excited." Lin Yi watched his appearance and was amused, laughing unhurriedly. "He has already died once, and now, I suppose he can be considered resurrected." He pointed to the thick, impenetrable fog around them and hinted, "Perceive this sea area and look for him. He should be a skeleton with an afro. Right now." A skeleton? Although Redfield was full of doubts, he immediately closed his eyes, and his powerful observation hockey spread out instantly like an invisible net. Roger and Shiki nearby also heard the name Brook and were both astonished. "Hummingbrook? I think I've heard this name," Roger said, rubbing his chin in reminiscence. "When we first set sail, he seemed to already be a fairly famous musician and swordsman. He counts as a senior." Ha 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 ha. "I didn't expect that guy Redfield to have actually idolized someone like that." Shiki took a swig of alcohol, looking like he was just there for the show. Just then, Redfield suddenly opened his eyes, his face filled with irrepressible ecstasy. "Over there." He pointed to a direction to the front left, even his fingertips trembling slightly. "Bueller, turn the ship." Lin Yi gave the order. The Myriad Soul ship immediately turned its bow and sailed in the direction Redfield pointed. The time that followed, the atmosphere on the deck became a bit strange. Redfield, who always paid attention to his appearance, seemed restless, as fidgety as a young man about to meet his crush. He would tug at his spotless collar one moment, and smooth out non-existent wrinkles on his clothes the next, muttering to himself, seemingly rehearsing his opening line for the meeting. Seeing that look, Roger and Shiki almost laughed out loud. Not long after, the outline of a dilapidated pirate ship with half its mast broken appeared faintly in the thick fog. Yahohoho yahohoho, a strange yet cheerful laughter penetrated the fog and drifted over. The crowd on the Myriad Souls ship hadn't even seen anyone yet, but they were stunned by this infectious laughter. Only Redfield, the moment he heard this familiar laughter, his body jolted again, so excited he almost jumped over directly. "Ah, don't be nervous, Fried." Lin Yi patted his shoulder and teased, let's go up and take a look." Redfield nodded heavily, took a deep breath, and followed Lin Yi as they leaped up, landing lightly on the deck of that broken ship. The deck was covered in moss, and there was an aura of decay everywhere. A skeleton wearing a tattered tuxedo and sporting a huge black afro was holding a violin, playing it for his own amusement. Sensing someone on board, the skeleton stopped his movements abruptly. Its hollow eye sockets looked over, then it bowed excitedly. "Yahohoho, hello, they're finally seeing living people again." Although Lin Yi had been mentally prepared, seeing a skeleton that could talk and move with his own eyes still shocked him a little. And Redfield beside him had already stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly with excitement. "Brook. Senior. I am Patrick Redfield. When I was a child, when your Rumbar pirates docked to rest, you chatted with me. I became a pirate just to follow in your footsteps." Brook's skeletal head tilted, and a trace of confusion seemed to flash through his hollow eye sockets. He tried hard to search through his memories that had been sealed for decades, searching. Suddenly, a vague little figure appeared in his mind. "Yahohoho, so it was you." He remembered, that little brat whose eyes were full of longing for the sea. "Long time no see." Brook laughed happily, then curiously looked at Redfield. "Are you also dead and turned into a soul?" No. Redfield, hearing that his idol remembered him, was so happy he was incoherent, waving his hands hurriedly and pointing to Lin Yi behind him, explaining quickly, "This is my current captain, Lin Yi. My current state is the captain's devil fruit ability." Brook then noticed Lin Yi and bowed again. "So that's how it is. Hello, this young captain." "Hello, Brook." Lin Yi smiled and greeted him. Roger and Shiki also flew over, circling the skeleton with curiosity, as if they had discovered some novel toy. Brook was generous enough to explain that he was a revive fruit user, and after an accidental death, his soul floated in the fog for a long time before he rediscovered his body, but the body was just bones left. Redfield excitedly pulled Brook to sit aside and began to tell him about his experiences over the years, from setting sail, to being locked in and impelled down, to being invited out by Lin Yi. Brook was also filled with emotion, recounting his and his companions' encounters in the Devil's Triangle, and his 40 years of drifting alone in this sea area. The two chatted enthusiastically, one having found an idol lost for many years, the other having found a long-lost listener. Lin Yi stood aside, not disturbing them, just looking at Brook thoughtfully. Revive fruit. It is also a devil fruit involving the soul realm, but the focus of its ability seems completely different. The 10,000 souls banner is for detaining, refining, and cultivating the souls of others. And the revive fruit is for strengthening one's own soul, even allowing the soul to leave the body, carrying the chill of the underworld. A faint, imperceptible curve slowly formed at the corner of Lin Yi's mouth. If he could also take this revive fruit user into the banner and carefully study his soul structure and the essence of his ability, that would definitely have immeasurable benefits for his next step in developing the 10,000 souls banner, and even for the final fruit awakening. Once this thought emerged, it took root and sprouted wildly in his heart. Chapter 88: The New Ability of the 10,000 Souls Banner. Redfield and Brooke, the two fellow countrymen meeting, chatted with such fervor in teary eyes. One chattered incessantly about how much he had admired the other back in the day, while the other lamented the loneliness of not seeing a soul for so many years, finally encountering someone he could talk to. The atmosphere, how should I put it, was a bit touching, and also a bit charged with bromance. Lin Yi listened from the side, yawning incessantly, feeling like a redundant third wheel. He cleared his throat, feeling it was time to interrupt this cross-generational fan meeting. Brooke. As soon as he spoke, the two guys chatting so happily instantly went quiet and turned their heads in unison to look at him. Lin Yi wore an innocent smile and straightforwardly extended an olive branch. Do you want to join us? Brooke's skeletal jaw almost dropped onto the deck, and his empty eye sockets were filled with giant question marks. This invitation, wasn't it a bit too sudden? Before he could respond, the little fanboy Redfield next to him had already stood up excitedly, looking at him with glowing eyes. The anticipation in that gaze was enough to melt Brooke's old bones. Yahohoho! Brooke scratched his afro, even though he didn't have dandruff. He had been alone for too long, so long that he had almost forgotten what it felt like to communicate with people. Now, not only had he met an idol from his youth, but this fan's captain had also taken the initiative to invite him. Was this damn loneliness finally coming to an end? He stood up elegantly, took off his top hat, and bowed deeply to Lin Yi. All right, Mr. Lin Yi. There was a hint of relieved lightness in his voice. Then please take care of me from now on. That's great. Redfield was as happy as a 300-pound child. Lin Yi, however, waved his hand, his smile becoming somewhat inscrutable. However, there is one thing I must make clear to you beforehand, he said slowly. Our pirate crew does not intend to travel around the world. So, that promise you made with Laboon, I'm afraid, cannot be fulfilled on our ship. Brooke's skeletal body stiffened abruptly, and his entire frame emitted a crisp click sound. Laboon. This name was like a bolt of lightning, splitting open memories that had been sealed for half a century. How could he know about Laboon? That was the most important promise between him and his companions. The sliver of hope that had just risen was instantly doused by a basin of cold water, leaving him chilled to the bone. Brooke felt that he might have agreed a bit too rashly. Watching his absent-minded state, Lin Yi laughed again. However, don't worry, he continued, acting like a mystic. Although I cannot take you to see it after fulfilling the promise, I can recommend a quite excellent pirate crew to you. He extended a finger and waved it in the air. About 12 years from now. You come back to this place and wait. There will be a kid wearing a straw hat. His name is Monkey D. Luffy. He will pass through here with his companions, and if you follow him, you will be able to fulfill your promise with Laboon. Brooke was completely bewildered. What is all this? Laboon, 12 years later, naming names. Is this young captain a prophet? Although there were 10,000 question marks in his heart, since he had already agreed to join, he couldn't go back on his word. All right. I understand, Mr. Lin Yi. Brooke nodded, deciding to temporarily follow this mysterious captain's arrangements. Very good. Lin Yi nodded with satisfaction, looking at this future ninth member of the Straw Hat crew, feeling overjoyed inside. He flipped his wrist, and the phantom of the 10,000 souls banner appeared out of thin air, a cold and grand aura instantly permeating the area. Yahohoho! This is... The moment Brooke felt this aura, his entire skeleton trembled violently, as if he had been electrocuted. Familiar. Too familiar. This aura seemed to originate from the same source as his soul, just like the aura of the underworld itself. Before he could feel it in detail, Lin Yi had already activated the 10,000 souls banner. An irresistible suction force came, and Brooks' soul was whooshed out of his skeletal body and into the banner. Clatter! The skeletal frame, having lost its soul support, instantly fell apart, collapsing onto the ground with a clatter. The next second, an unprecedented, incomparably pure and vast mental soul power, like a breached flood, exploded in Lin Yi's perception. Damn it! Lin Yi's expression changed, and he hurriedly sat cross-legged, concentrating all his energy to digest this sudden power. This soul power was different from any soul he had absorbed before. It wasn't just a simple accumulation of power, it was more like a completion of rules. Hum, 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 the 10,000 souls banner vibrated violently, and on the banner's surface, those complex patterns began to flow and reorganize on their own. Gradually, a vague and ancient mark slowly emerged at the core position of the banner. That mark looked exactly like a path to the underworld. The development level of the 10,000 souls banner, at this moment, skyrocketed like a rocket. Although there was still a long way to go before the true Devil Fruit awakening, Lin Yi felt that his control and understanding of the 10,000 souls banner had instantly improved by more than one level. More importantly, an incredible, brand new function was clearly branded into his mind. Soul possession. He could attach any soul within the 10,000 souls banner to himself. During the possession, he would become the master of consciousness, perfectly controlling all the abilities the soul had possessed in life. Hockey, martial arts, swordsmanship, even devil fruit abilities. Lin Yi's breathing instantly became rapid. What kind of concept is this? This meant that, whenever he wanted, he could have Roger's soul possess him, directly possessing the full strength of the Pirate King at his peak. He could have Golden Lion Shiki's soul possess him, not only using his top-tier swordsmanship but also using his Flutter Fruit ability to fly in the sky. I can now use Devil Fruit abilities at will? As long as it is an ability possessed by the souls under my command, I can use it directly upon possession? After digesting this earth-shattering new function, Lin Yi could no longer suppress the ecstasy in his heart, leaped up from the ground, and let out a frantic laugh towards the sky. Ha ha! Ha 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 ha! I am invincible! The laughter echoed in the mist, making Roger and Shiki, who were nearby, roll their eyes. What kind of sickness does this kid have again? Shiki muttered. Lin Yi laughed enough, then remembered the serious business, waved his hand, and released Brooks' soul from the banner. A green soul shadow whooshed back into the pile of bones on the ground, and the next second, the scattered skeletal frame automatically reassembled, and Brooks stood up again. Yahohoho, what a wonderful experience! Lin Yi looked at him, clicking his tongue in wonder. This revive fruit was truly special, able to let a soul perfectly return to its own shell. It was a pity, though, that this ability was of no use for the other souls under his command. However, now, he already possessed an even more overpowered ability. Lin Yi rubbed his hands excitedly, looking with burning eyes at Roger, who had a confused expression, his Chinibu soul burning fiercely. He struck an extremely flashy pose, raised his right arm high, and used all his strength to let out a shout that resounded through the sky, Roger armor. Combine. Ha! Roger was full of question marks, completely failing to understand what kind of madness this kid was spouting. Lin Yi ignored him, directly activated the 10,000 souls banner, and beckoned to Roger, signaling him to come over. Roger's soul body drifted over subconsciously. Immediately after, in the shocked eyes of everyone, Roger's translucent soul body, like a brilliant, flowing suit of armor, instantly enveloped Lin Yi's entire body. A flash of light. When the light dissipated, a figure with a brand new aura appeared on the deck. Although it was Lin Yi's appearance and body, the aura on him was completely different, and his eyes flashed with the domineering and heroic spirit belonging to the Pirate King. Chapter 89, Powerful Possession Ability. Lin Yi subconsciously raised his hand and quickly stroked his chin. Smooth, delicate. Phew, that's a relief. Thankfully, I didn't grow those signature handlebar mustaches like Roger. He leaned over to the ship's railing, using the blurry reflection on the pitch-black sea surface to check himself. Still as handsome as ever. After narcissistically talking to himself, he slowly closed his eyes, calmed his mind, and carefully sensed the terrifying, surging power within him, like a volcano about to erupt. Is this the power of the Pirate King? After Gold Roger's soul possessed him, his peak martial arts, swordsmanship, hockey, and vast combat experience seemed to have become his own instincts, merging perfectly with him. Lin Yi slowly raised the blade in his hand, and a tyrannical conqueror's haki, like a waking dragon, instantly coiled around it, causing black and red lightning to crackle across the blade. The air trembled, and the sea roared. He took a sudden step forward, the muscles in his arms bulging, and fiercely swung his sword toward the thick, eerie mist ahead that seemed impossible to disperse. God's repulsion. There was no earth-shattering roar, only an extremely concentrated black slash that seemed to tear through space itself, flashing by in an instant. The next second. Boom! The sea surface for thousands of meters ahead, along with the thick fog that seemed to have existed since ancient times, was forcibly split open, creating a massive gap several kilometers long. The pitch-black seawater was pushed to both sides, forming a bottomless canyon in the ocean, while the fog, split in two, seemed to be held down by invisible hands, unable to close for a long time. Sunlight pierced through this cursed sea area for the first time, casting a golden beam of light that appeared both sacred and eerie. On the deck, there was a deathly silence. Everyone was stunned by the power of that sword strike. How is this possible? Hawkeye Mihawk widened his sharp hawk-like eyes, staring fixedly at Lin Yi, his knuckles white as he clenched his fists, his voice filled with unbelievable shock. Clearly when he sparred with him on the uninhabited island a few days ago, even though this guy's swordsmanship was top tier, they were still evenly matched. It's only been a few days, how did he suddenly become so powerful? The spirit, power, and artistic conception of this strike. Hawkeye suddenly remembered something, his gaze sweeping toward the name Lin Yi had just shouted, and then looking at the overbearing aura on him that made him seem like a completely different person. Lin Yi, what kind of devil fruit ability is this? To be able to. His voice was a bit dry, as the pride of the world's greatest swordsman, he was experiencing an unprecedented, violent shock at this moment. Gwahahaha. Not bad, kid. Golden Lion Shiki's wild laughter broke the silence, and his eyes held a bit more gravity as he looked at Lin Yi. Although Redfield and Bullet didn't speak, their suddenly constricted pupils already revealed the turmoil in their hearts. Brook opened his mouth wide in an exaggerated manner, although he no longer had flesh on his chin, the gesture perfectly expressed his shock. Ha ha ha. How about that? Strong, right? Feeling the shocked gazes of everyone, Lin Yi was thrilled. He stood with his hands on his hips and boasted triumphantly, "This is my newly developed devil fruit ability. Now, I can turn all of you legendary souls into my own strength." He held up a finger and waved it in the air. "However strong you are, that's how strong I am. Of course, for now, I can only possess one at a time, and I can only obtain the full strength of the currently possessed soul." Hawkeye didn't know what to say anymore. This kind of devil fruit ability is just too buggy. This means that Lin Yi alone possesses the peak combat power reserves of an entire legendary pirate crew. Today he can be the Pirate King, tomorrow he can be Golden Lion, and the day after he can be the Devil's Descendant. How is one supposed to fight this? Hawkeye's rock-solid heart of swordsmanship wavered slightly at this moment, causing him to have the thought for the first time, maybe, should I go get a devil fruit to try? However, this thought only flashed by for a moment. He took a deep breath, gripped his black blade tightly again, and his gaze became firm once more. True swordsmanship is a path that belongs to oneself. Having shown off enough, Lin Yi moved his mind and withdrew Roger's soul from the possession state. The kingly aura that looked down upon the world instantly dissipated, and he turned back into the slightly handsome Lin Yi. Old Roger, that felt great. He greeted Roger, then ran excitedly in front of Golden Lion. Shiki. Come on, next. Let me try yours. Gwahahaha. Good kid, you've got a good eye. Shiki looked pleased and turned into a soul shadow without hesitation. Come on. Let me let you properly experience the power of my flutter fruit. The soul entered his body. Unlike the domineering and peerless power of Roger just now, this time, Lin Yi felt a strange sense of control, as if he had established a connection with everything in the world. He felt that he could control everything around him that he had touched, including himself. Rise! Lin Yi moved his mind, and his entire body defied the laws of physics, floating up lightly. I can fly too! Ha! Like a child who just got a new toy, he excitedly soared around in the sky above the Myriad Souls ship, flying backward for a while, circling for a while, and having a great time. The people on the deck looked at his pathetic display, all speechless. After doing a few somersaults in the air, Lin Yi landed back on the deck with satisfaction and released Shiki's soul as well. I won't try red fields and bullets for now, there will be plenty of opportunities later. He clapped his hands, his expression turning serious. Let's attend to business first. He turned around, facing the direction of the helm, and shouted spiritedly, Bueller! Go! It's time to head to Thriller Bark and welcome our new partner. As you command, Captain. The ship's spirit's old voice responded. The Myriad Soul ship let out a low rumble, the hull shook slightly, and then its speed increased dramatically, like an arrow off a bowstring, speeding toward the deeper parts of the Devil's Triangle. The gap in the fog split by God's repulsion slowly closed behind them, dragging the sea area back into endless darkness once again. Not long after, a giant ship silhouette, so vast it was like an island, slowly emerged from the thick fog. It was a ship with an extremely eerie style. The hull looked like a huge mouth, the masts were like dead trees, the sails were tattered, and the entire ship exuded an aura of death and decay. It was none other than the ship of the 7 warlords of the sea, Gecko Mariah, Thriller Bark. Just as the Myriad Soul ship approached, a peculiar and sharp laugh pierced through the thick fog and reached them. He. I was wondering who had the guts to make such a big commotion on my turf. Lin Yi and the others looked in the direction of the laughter and saw a man with an unusually tall figure, looking like an onion head, standing at the bow of Thriller Bark, arms crossed, looking down at them. 7 warlords of the sea, Gecko Mariah. Apparently, the movement from Lin Yi's God's repulsion sword strike just now was simply too big, directly startling this homebody. You must be the recently rising new 4 emperors, demon emperor of 10,000 souls Lin Yi? Mariah grinned, revealing a mouthful of sharp teeth, his eyes carrying a hint of greed and scrutiny. Mariah, is it? Lin Yi also laughed. He leaned against the railing and greeted him lazily. I didn't expect you to be so hospitable, especially coming out to welcome us. It saves us the trouble of having to go find you. Mariah's smile stiffened. His gaze slowly moved away from Lin Yi and swept across the figures behind him. Pirate King Roger. Golden Lion. Redfield. Devil's Descendant. And one more, that Hawkeye carrying the supreme grade sword. The expression on Mariah's face gradually shifted from initial arrogance and greed to astonishment, then to gravity, and finally, it turned into an unmaskable fear. He looked warily at the row of legendary monsters on the Myriad Soul ship, a drop of cold sweat silently sliding down his forehead. Chapter 90, Returning with a Full Load. Cold sweat dripped down Gecko Mariah's onion-shaped chin, drop by drop. It hit the cold deck of Thriller Bark. The sound wasn't loud, but in his own ears, it sounded like thunder. He watched the pitch-black Myriad Soul ship opposite him, tense and ready for battle. Looking at that row of legendary monsters whose mere presence was enough to turn the tides of the sea, the veins on his forehead throbbed. All his subordinates had died years ago in Wano country, at the hands of Kaido. Since then, he had become passive, only willing to deal with cold corpses, and his strength had regressed significantly. He couldn't even defeat Kaido, let alone these old monsters on the opposite ship whose names were even more terrifying than Kaido's. No, he couldn't let his momentum slip. Kishishishi. Mariah forced a signature, yet incredibly dry laugh from his throat. He crossed his arms, striking a condescending pose. What business do you have coming to my Thriller Bark? He spoke nervously, his voice as ethereal as a ghost. Lin Yi leaned against the ship's railing, lazily picking his ear, not even bothering to look at Mariah's bluffing demeanor. I'm here to cooperate with you. Lin Yi's voice was very flat. You're quite the expert at stealing. Corpses, he grinned. You should also know about my ability. I can extract the souls of the dead and turn them into my subordinates. So, it's very simple. He spread his hands. You steal your corpses, I harvest my souls, and we both win. Kishishishi. Mariah's laugh sounded more like a leaking bellows. Both win? How come I feel like I'd become your subordinate? You don't have to do anything to get souls, doesn't that mean I'm working for you for nothing? Ha, don't worry, Lin Yi laughed brightly. How could I let you work for nothing? He changed the subject, a hint of playfulness in his eyes. Do you want to take revenge for your dead comrades? Mariah's massive body jolted, his pupils shrinking suddenly. Revenge. These two words were like a red-hot branding iron, searing his heart. I can help you deal with Kaido, Lin Yi said dismissively. Mariah's breathing instantly became heavy. He was both shocked and overjoyed, his huge eyeballs bloodshot. Really? You can help me deal with Kaido? He didn't doubt whether Lin Yi could defeat Kaido. Are you kidding? Although that guy Kaido is strong like a monster, look at what kind of things are standing on the opposite ship. Any one of them could turn the new world upside down. He just couldn't believe that Lin Yi would really be willing to offend another 4 emperors, Kaido, for his sake. Lin Yi looked confident, as if Kaido was just an experienced pack in his eyes. Of course, he answered as a matter of course. As long as you obediently help me find the corpses of strong people, helping you deal with Kaido is just a side task. Besides. He licked his lips, a hunter's light flashing in his eyes. He is also my hunting target sooner or later. Kishishishi. Kishishishi. Mariah instantly became happy, the laughter no longer dry, but filled with irrepressible ecstasy and excitement. It's a deal. He was going to collect the corpses of the strong anyway. As long as Lin Yi only wanted the souls, it wouldn't affect him making his own zombie army at all. And he could take his deep blood feud from back then. This deal was a huge profit. I have quite a few corpses on my ship right now. Mariah's attitude did a 180-degree turn instantly, becoming incredibly enthusiastic. Do you want to see them first? Of course. Lin Yi tapped his toes, his figure leaping up like a ghost, landing lightly on Thriller bark. Take us there. By the way, Lin Yi asked casually, as if suddenly remembering something, Ryuma's corpse is here too, right? You actually know about Ryuma? Mariah led the way, looking back at him in surprise as he walked. He is indeed here. Ah, of course, Lin Yi followed closely. One of our main goals this trip is him. When Hawkeye heard the name Ryuma confirmed, a hint of imperceptible excitement flashed in his sharp eyes, and his following footsteps subconsciously quickened a little. After walking through the gloomy and eerie castle for a long time, Mariah finally pushed open a huge stone door. Boom! A vast hall appeared before everyone's eyes. In the hall, various armor, corpses, and huge coffins were densely placed, eerie and gloomy. Those corpses of the strong are all placed here, Mariah said, pointing inside. Lin Yi nodded, then without a word, flipped his wrist. The phantom of the 10,000 souls banner appeared out of thin air, and a grand and cold aura instantly enveloped the entire hall. In the next second, a shocking scene occurred. Streams of strong or weak soul-light shadows rose slowly from the armor and coffins that had been silent for who knows how many years, as if drawn by some mysterious power, continuously gathering toward the 10,000 souls banner in midair. Among them, several particularly powerful souls were especially eye-catching. Lin Yi, like a collector reviewing his spoils, counted these newly acquired strong ones with satisfaction. The sword god of Wano country, Ryuma. Windblade Goru. Captain John of the Rocks Pirates. And Gone Fall. The mid to high level combat power in the 10,000 souls banner was suddenly filled up quite a bit. By the way, Lin Yi looked at Mariah, still feeling unsatisfied after absorbing this wave. What about Oars? You even know about Oars the continent puller? Mariah was completely shocked. How did this kid seem to know everything? Kishishishi, come with me. He led Lin Yi to a side door deep in the hall. Let you see the most outstanding corpse I've prepared. However, it's just not repaired yet. Lin Yi waved his hand indifferently. Anyway, he could rely on feeding souls to repair the soul body and strength. Following Mariah through a long corridor, they came to a huge place that looked like a cold storage warehouse. An incomplete, but still suffocatingly huge corpse was lying there quietly. Good guy. Lin Yi looked at this behemoth and couldn't help but exclaim, as expected of an existence several times larger than the giant race. Ordinary giants are only 10 to 20 meters tall, but this guy or's body is nearly 70 meters. However, his movements were not slow at all. He activated the 10,000 souls banner again, and imprisoned or's equally massive soul into it as well. Mission accomplished. Lin Yi was satisfied. He turned to look at the vast graveyard outside, thought for a moment, and summoned the 10,000 souls banner again. This time, hundreds or thousands of ordinary soul-light shadows rose from the graveyard like fireflies, forming a spectacular river of souls, all of which were sucked into the banner. The 10,000 souls banner suddenly became very lively. On the way back to the Myriad Souls ship, a 10-year-old girl with twin tails, wearing a gothic Lolita dress, poked her head out from behind a pillar, looked at them timidly, and then quickly hid behind Mariah. Kishishishi, this is Perona, Mariah introduced. Lin Yi certainly knew her. This girl would torture the straw hat later on, and her ghost fruit could be considered a bug-level fruit. If there's a chance in the future, I'll come and check it out. Lin Yi thought as he had already made a circle, scraped all the souls on Thriller Bark, and took everyone back to the Myriad Souls ship. He stood on the bow and waved at Mariah below. Mariah, when the time comes, I will take you to take down Kaido. Before that, you just continue to diligently collect corpses of the strong for me. Kishishishi, okay, Lin Yi. Mariah responded excitedly, his voice full of unprecedented motivation. Lin Yi looked at him, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. This guy, although his brain isn't great, he is still quite loyal to his companions. In the future, it might be worth considering taking him under his command. Chapter 91, The Blade God Ryuma joins the Myriad Souls ship sailed steadily through the thick fog, gradually leaving behind the Thriller Bark that resembled the skeleton of a giant beast. On the deck, Lin Yi flicked his wrist, and a solid soul apparition materialized out of thin air. It was a man dressed in samurai attire, his face resolute, bearing a striking 70% resemblance to the future three-sword-style swordsman with green hair. He simply stood there quietly, yet an extremely pure and powerful sword intent, as if capable of cutting through anything in the world, swept across the entire deck like a storm. All the legends present, whether it was Roger or Shiki, instinctively glanced over. Behind this soul figure, a terrifying phantom flickered faintly into view. A colossal, sky-obscuring dragon rampaged through the air, roaring and spewing flames, only to be cleanly severed in two by a single earth-shattering slash from him. The dragon's head fell, its blood raining down. Impressive. Feeling this pure and powerful will of the sword, Lin Ye's eyes lit up. In terms of swordsmanship alone, on this ship of mine, aside from Roger, I'm afraid no one else could really match him. He took out the black blade Shisui he had acquired from Mariah and handed it over. Your sword. Ryuma's soul trembled slightly. He reached out and took the blade that had accompanied him throughout his life. The familiar feel and weight caused ripples in his normally placid soul. He already understood why he could manifest in this world again. Lord Lin Yi. Ryuma placed Shisui at his waist and performed a formal, standard samurai bow to Lin Yi. From now on, I look forward to your guidance. Ha, as expected of the blade god Ryuma of Wano country. The aura is truly different. Lin Yi laughed heartily with satisfaction, patting him on the shoulder. Welcome aboard. Ryuma straightened up, his gaze slowly sweeping over the figures on the deck. Roger, Shiki, Redfield, Bullet. Each one of them radiated an intimidating presence no less than his own, and the sword wills of several among them were so powerful they made even him feel a jolt of shock. When his gaze swept over the skeleton with an afro in the corner, he instinctively paused for a moment, and then skipped right over it. Hey, hey, hey! Brooke instantly took offense, leaping 3 feet high from the ground. What's that look supposed to mean? I'm alive. Alive! Ah, my apologies. Although somewhat astonished by the talking skeleton, Ryuma politely gave a slight bow. Ha ha ha. Finally, his gaze settled on Hawkeye. Those sharp, hawk-like eyes burned with a pure, unadulterated fire of swordsmanship, like a divine weapon being tempered 1,000 times, growing robustly. Young man, Ryuma praised sincerely, your swordsmanship is formidable. Senior. Hawkeye's breathing instantly became rapid. His blood boiled throughout his body, his right hand subconsciously gripping the hilt of the black blade, Yoro on his back, his eyes blazing with fighting spirit. Would you be willing to give me some guidance? Before the words had fully left his mouth, he was already preparing to draw his blade, seemingly intent on starting a fight right then and there on the Myriad Soul ship. You stop right there. Lin Yi, quick as lightning, slapped the hand gripping the hilt and scolded him irritably, you sword-obsessed maniac. Are you trying to wreck my beloved ship? Our new crewmate's soul hasn't even stabilized yet, and you're already itching to fight him? There will be plenty of chances later for you to spar. Hawkeye was taken aback, only then realizing he had indeed been too hasty. He looked at Ryuma, reined in his fighting spirit, and apologized solemnly, my apologies, I was too eager. That's more like it. Seeing his attitude, Lin Ye's anger instantly dissipated, and he nodded with satisfaction. Immediately after, he waved his hand, and 2 more soul apparitions appeared on the deck. They were Shiki's old acquaintances, Captain John and Gon. Jihahaha. The moment Shiki saw these two, he couldn't contain his glee, pointing at them and laughing uproariously. John! You miser, so fond of hoarding treasure all for yourself, never thought you'd end up killed by your own crew, did you? And you? Gon! He turned to the soul missing its lower half. You bastard, you even dared to stab me in the back then. Serves you right, you're dead now too, and you're missing half your body to boot. Jihahaha, you both had it coming. Captain John and Gon, having their shortcomings exposed so publicly by Shiki, wore expressions of extreme awkwardness, wishing they could find a crack in the deck to crawl into. Lin Yi sized up these 2 new souls. Captain John, greedy, but if kept in check, could be a decent treasure hunter. As for this Gon, a turncoat, and with only half a soul left. Restoring him to his peak state would waste a lot of soul material. Better to make use of waste. Having made up his mind, Lin Yi focused his will and activated the 10,000 souls banner. Gon's half-soul instantly let out a piercing shriek as an invisible force crushed it into the purest soul energy. Whoosh! This energy was directly injected into Ryuma's body. Ryuma's originally somewhat ethereal soul solidified noticeably. This scene scared Captain John half to death. With a thud, his legs gave way, and he fell to his knees. He scrambled on hands and knees to Lin Yi's feet, clutching his leg, weeping and wailing as if the world were ending, tears and snot flowing freely. Captain! Boss! I'm still useful. I can be useful. I won't be greedy for treasure anymore. I swear. I'll take you to get all the treasure I hid away when I was alive. There's lots and lots of treasure there, all for you. Please, I beg you, don't kill me. Shiki looked at his spineless, cowardly display with disgust, curling his lip. Lin Yi was also speechless, watching Captain John, who had just been trying to put on some airs as a legendary pirate, instantly transform into this groveling, servile state. I never said I was going to crush you too. His voice was calm, but Captain John instantly quieted down, looking up at him with tear-filled eyes. It's just. Lin Yi's gaze turned cold as he stared at John. I can't stand betrayal. That Gon, stabbing his own comrades in the back whenever he felt like it, keeping him around would have been a liability, useless. He paused, then spoke slowly. You aren't that kind of person, are you? No. Absolutely not. Captain John shook his head like a rattledrum, practically ready to swear to the heavens. I'm the most loyal person. You tell me to go east, I'd never go west. I'll be the most loyal. All right. Seeing his fawning manner, Lin Yi couldn't be bothered to scare him any further. Fine. From now on, you're my logistics chief, responsible for collecting supplies and treasure for me. Lin Yi gave his backside a light kick. All the treasure you hid in your previous life will be confiscated for my treasury. You don't have a problem with that, do you? No problem? Of course not. Captain John instantly switched from tears to laughter, scrambling up from the ground and bowing repeatedly. All the treasure I collected before was prepared for you all along. You're just taking back what's rightfully yours. Why would you need to ask for my opinion? Lin Yi looked at this sensible fellow and nodded with satisfaction. Chapter 92, Assigning Division Commander Positions. Lin Yi focused his mind into the 10,000 Souls banner, looking at the soul body lying in a corner of the banner's space, massive as a mountain range. He couldn't help but click his tongue. Ors the continent puller. Even in its incomplete state, this guy's soul emanated a primal, savage aura reminiscent of ancient wilderness. However, its soul body was currently extremely weak and frail, like a deflating balloon. Forget it, it's too big. Not very convenient to release right now, Lin Yi muttered. Better to let it recuperate properly inside the banner for now. With a thought, he shifted his attention away from Ors and then flipped his wrist. On the deck, the final powerful soul silhouette solidified out of thin air. It was a samurai whose stature wasn't particularly tall, yet he stood exceptionally straight and proud. He wore simple Wano country attire, his long hair tied casually behind his head. His face bore the marks of hardship, and his eyes were as calm as a deep, unfathomable ancient well. Yet, despite this seemingly ordinary appearance, the moment he appeared, an indescribable, sharp aura, a chilling mix of a guardian's conviction and boundless slaughter, instantly enveloped the entire area. Everyone seemed to witness an illusion of mountains of corpses and seas of blood. A man, standing alone to protect his homeland behind him, facing thousands upon thousands of ferocious pirates surging forward like a tide. The sword in his hand had severed 7,000 heads. Kaze no Jigaru, Lin Yi slowly uttered the name. Wano country had countless strong individuals, as numerous as carp crossing a river, but this guy was definitely one of the toughest among them. Oh? Ryuma's normally placid soul body trembled slightly the instant he sensed this aura. His profound gaze fell upon Jigaru, carrying a trace of mutual respect and admiration, one warrior for another. As the former daimyo of Ringo and Wano's sword god, he could clearly perceive the purity in this man's swordsmanship, not for fame, not for profit, but solely for protection. I am Ryuma. Ryuma actually took the initiative to step forward, performing a formal, deep samurai bow towards Jigaru. Jigaru, looking at the legendary hero of Wano before him, was slightly taken aback. He immediately bowed in return with an even deeper gesture, his voice hoarse yet powerful. I am unworthy of such respect, Lord Ryuma. He's a real man. Roger watched the scene and let out a hearty, booming laugh. Jaya ha ha ha. Fighting 7,000 scum for your family, that's guts. Shiki also gave a rare word of approval. The atmosphere on the deck grew even more subtle and powerful with the addition of this new comrade. Lin Yi looked at this gathering of dazzling legends before him, his heart swelling with immense pride. The crew was growing larger and larger. He cleared his throat, stepped before everyone, and wore an unprecedented seriousness on his face. Ahem, everyone. Instantly, all eyes focused on him. Now, our objective in the first half of the Grand Line has been successfully completed. Lin Yi's voice rang out resolutely, echoing across the deck. It's time to head to the New World and deliver a little shock to those so-called monsters. He paused, his gaze sweeping over every legendary soul present. Hereby, I announce. Roger, you are the 1st Division Commander of our 10,000 Souls Pirates. Also serving as Vice Captain. Roger was momentarily stunned, then grinned widely, letting out his signature hearty laugh. Ha ha ha. Captain Redfield. You are the 2nd Division Commander. Also serving as Intelligence Officer. The red-haired Count, Patrick Redfield, elegantly smoothed his sideburns and nodded with a smile, accepting the appointment. Bullet, you are the 3rd Division Commander. Combatant. The Devil's Child, Douglas Bullet, grinned even wider on his already arrogant face, revealing a mouthful of stark white teeth. The muscles all over his body trembled with excitement. Just call me when there's a fight to be had. Shiki, you are the 4th Division Commander. Also serving as helmsman. Jaya ha ha ha. Golden Lion Shiki threw his head back and laughed uproariously. Ryuma, you are the 5th Division Commander. Combatant. The newly arrived Ryuma, hearing this, placed one hand on his sword hilt and gave Lin Yi a slight bow. Understood. Thank you for your high regard, Captain. John, you are the 6th Division Commander. Also serving as Quartermaster. Captain. Captain John, who had been scared out of his wits just moments ago, now straightened his back, his face a picture of tearful gratitude, almost ready to thump his chest in assurance. I will definitely manage our pirate crew's logistics flawlessly, I won't hold anyone back. Lin Yi looked at everyone's reactions with satisfaction and continued arranging. The Elite 5, you'll follow Redfield first and help me lay down the intelligence network in the New World. Kaze no Jigaru, you will serve as the vice commander of the 5th Division for now, assisting Ryuma. As for manpower. He stroked his chin. We'll wait for that middleman Doflamingo to deliver the first batch of crew members to us. Once we establish a foothold in the New World, plant our flag, and secure some territory, you'll all be free to go and recruit your own squads. Remember, each division must recruit at least 1,000 people. And I only want the elite. Lin Yi looked at this pirate crew leadership that could be called the most luxurious lineup in history and waved his hand with soaring ambition. Let's set a small goal first, conquer the entire New World. Ha ha ha. The crew is finally starting to look more and more proper. Roger's laughter was full of contentment. Finally, Lin Yi's gaze fell upon the skeletal figure on the deck. Brooke. Yahohoho present, Mr. Lin Yi. The Afro-skeleton stood at attention. You, for now, don't have a specific task, Lin Yi said with a smile. When we reach Sabaody Archipelago, I'll have Redfield find you a reliable manager. You go ahead and be the great musician you are, fulfill your music dream. When the time is right, you can go join Luffy and the others, travel the world with that kid. Yahohoho. Really? Thank you so much, Mr. Lin Yi. Brooke was moved to tears, even though he lacked tear ducts. Lin Yi then looked towards the man in the corner who had been silently holding a black blade. My hawk. Hawkeye lifted his head, his sharp gaze turning towards him. Have you thought about it? Lin Yi's tone held a hint of anticipation. Will you join us? After all, there were only 2 living people on this ship. Having one more breathing soul would feel a bit better. Hawkeye remained silent for a moment. He nodded, then shook his head. I can join you. His voice was as low and steady as ever. But not now. He paused, his eyes sweeping over Ryuma, over Roger, burning with an undying fire for the sword path. I will stay on your ship for a while. Afterwards, I will continue to challenge strong opponents from all over the world. When I have fulfilled my dream, I will return. Ha ha ha. Good. Upon hearing this, Lin Yi laughed heartily. With those words, I am reassured. He slapped the ship's railing forcefully and shouted to everyone, crew. Let's have a banquet. To celebrate the addition of Ryuma and the others. Oh. Banquet time. On the Myriad Soul ship, the previously suppressed atmosphere was swept away, instantly replaced by joy and clamor. Shiki threw an arm around Captain John's neck, bragging with flying spittle about his glorious past deeds of single-handedly storming Marineford and then escaping Impel Down with style. John listened, nodding repeatedly, his face full of admiration. Hawkeye, holding a glass of red wine, took the initiative to walk over to Ryuma and Jigaru. The 3 top swordsmen from different eras stood at the ship's corner, quietly discussing the true meaning of swordsmanship regarding cutting and protecting. Brooke took out his violin and began playing the classic Bink Sake. The cheerful melody drifted across the sea. Yahoho, I'll send Bink Sake your way, the brew we've treasured for so long, come. Drink! Roger had somehow produced 2 enormous barrels of sake, stomping one under each foot. He pulled Lin Yi along, dancing and singing to the rhythm. The legends set aside their past identities and glory. On this ship carrying countless souls, they laughed and reveled to their heart's content. Amidst this jubilant atmosphere, the hull of the myriad souls ship cut through the mist, sailing steadfastly towards the direction of the New World. And far ahead on their course, on the distant horizon, a white ship flying the flag of the world government was sailing silently, heading straight towards their direction. Chapter 93, The Eerie Shikasaikan Lord Gorosei. The cold face of the transponder snail mimicked the speaker's expression, revealing a deep sense of exhaustion and resentment. The CP0 agent, his chest wrapped in thick bandages, spoke with a raspy voice, every word seeming to strain the wound on his chest. Such a fierce and powerful Shikasaikan, are we really going to hand it over to that Linyi? We spent such a great price to. Enough. On the other end of the transponder snail, Satan Saint's voice showed no emotion, like ice that hadn't melted for 10,000 years, instantly freezing all of the CP0's unspoken words. No more words are needed. You only need to execute the orders and deliver that sword and the devil fruit, intact, into Linya's hands. You are not allowed to do anything outside of your orders. Click. The call was cut off unilaterally, and the transponder snail closed its eyes, returning to its original dull appearance. The CP0 agent dropped his hand weakly, fine beads of cold sweat seeping from his forehead, partly from the unquestionable pressure of the Gorosei, and partly from the sharp pain coming from his chest that felt as if it would tear his soul apart. His gaze involuntarily fell toward the center of the deck. There, a huge iron box was tied tightly with dozens of sea stone chains. Even so, a faint, heart-palpitating bloody malevolent aura still stubbornly seeped out, making the surrounding air thick and cold. Shikasaikan. Just thinking of the name caused that nightmare-like memory to surge up uncontrollably, the color of fresh blood instantly staining his entire vision. That was just a few days ago. They, the three newly promoted CP0 agents, were full of high spirits. After learning the exact news of Asuka Island, in order to perform well before the Gorosei, they led a team of elite CP agents and rushed to that forgotten island. It's just going to fetch some unknown broken sword. Before setting off, the leading companion had smiled contemptuously, dusting off his spotless white suit. Such a simple task is practically a gift of merit. With the strength of the three of us, isn't it just a walk in the park? Confidence, or even arrogance, filled each of their hearts. So, when they arrived at Asuka Island, their subordinate agents were about to report the eerie legends about the Shikasaikan on the island, but before they could say much, they were interrupted. They headed straight to the mission location. Then, disaster struck. When they found the Shikasaikan slanted into an ancient altar, the sky was somehow covered by an eerie red full moon. The blood-colored moonlight, like a devil's gaze, drenched the entire island. The leading CP0, caught off guard, walked toward the sword step by step. He didn't even heed the warnings of his companions behind him. He directly grasped the hilt. At that very moment, roar! A roar that didn't sound human exploded from deep within his throat. His eyes instantly turned crimson, and black blood vessels crawled across his whites like spiderwebs. A terrifying bloodshee, like physical red mist, erupted from every pore of his body, enveloping him entirely. He was directly bewitched and controlled by this cursed Shikasaikan. Before the remaining two could react, their companion controlled by the Shikasaikan had already turned into a beast with nothing but a desire to kill. Wake up! The other companion tried to wake him, but what he received was a blood-colored sword light that was incredibly fast and carried endless resentment. Poochie! A fine head flew into the sky, warm blood splashing all over his face. He was completely stunned. The rest of the memory was endless slaughter and wailing under that blood moon. The controlled companion slaughtered those elite CP agents like cutting melons and vegetables. As for himself, after struggling to resist for a dozen moves, he was struck hard in the chest by a sword. That powerful force instantly invaded his body, causing him to fall into a coma from serious injuries on the spot. The entire team, except for him, none were spared. If it weren't for a clever agent who used his last breath before dying to send out a distress signal through a transponder snail. Later, Marineford sent reinforcements. Admiral Kizaru. It was said that even Admiral Kizaru spent quite a bit of effort to subdue that companion who had completely gone mad. And this extremely fierce cursed sword was also tightly sealed away. Phew! The surviving CP0 agent let out a long breath of turbid air, as if to exhale the bloody memory from his lungs as well. He looked at the man lying on a beach chair not far away, wearing sunglasses and leisurely soaking up the sun, and felt a little more at ease. With Admiral Kizaru personally escorting them, this mission shouldn't have any more hiccups, right? Kizaru sat with his legs crossed, holding a cup of juice in his hand, seemingly completely ignoring the conversation between the CP0 and the Gorosei here. But in reality, he didn't miss a single word. He just couldn't be bothered. Or rather, he had a headache. He was going to meet that guy named Linyi again. How scary his mouth curled habitually, but the look in his eyes under the sunglasses was full of inescapable troublesome emotions. Speaking of which, the three highest combat powers the Marines were proud of had all, one by one, fallen at the hands of that demon emperor of 10,000 souls, Linyi. Akainu was the most miserable, beaten until he almost doubted his life. Akiji also suffered a significant loss. Thinking about it this way, did it seem like he was the one with the lightest injuries? Thinking of this, Kizaru actually felt a small sense of relief. But unfortunately, now, because of this damn mission, he had to face those monsters again. He could only pray that this mission would end smoothly. His eyes inadvertently glanced at the iron box wrapped like a zongzi with sea stone and chains. Shikasaiken. Handing such a peerless weapon of murder to that Linyi, who was already fierce enough. TSK, TSK, TSK. What on earth were those old guys in the Gorosei thinking? And those devil fruits being escorted together. This wasn't just aiding the enemy, this was practically rushing to give the enemy equipment, experience, and cheats. He couldn't understand it. Kizaru shook his head, deciding not to think about it anymore. Anyway, his justice was an ambiguous justice. Whether the world was destroyed or not, what did it have to do with him? Whatever happens, happens. Clocking in for work, slacking off to get paid, and clocking out on time, that was the true meaning of life. He adjusted the angle of the lounge chair so he could more comfortably bathe in the sunlight. This transaction was, after all, an underground deal between the world government and the four emperors Linyi, so it wasn't convenient to deploy marine warships with great fanfare and attract attention. Therefore, he also followed this inconspicuous world government ship to carry out this escort mission. Although it wasn't on his own warship, he still had to lie flat when it was time to lie flat. Chapter 94, Acquiring the Sword in Devil Fruits. The next day, at dusk, the sea level was dyed a thick orange-red. On the deck of the Myriad Souls ship, Redfield was elegantly wiping his umbrella, which never left his side, when his movements suddenly paused. He tilted his head slightly, his deep eyes seemingly piercing through layers of the sea to look into the distance. What is it? Ride, are there enemies? Linyi was leaning against the ship's railing, boredly tossing a berry. Seeing Redfield like this, he asked casually. It's Admiral Kizaru and people from the world government. Redfield's voice was flat, yet carried an unmistakable certainty. They are heading towards us rapidly. Linya's hand jerked, and the berry almost fell into the sea. That guy Kizaru actually dares to come here? Has his previous wound healed properly already? Redfield shook his head, a playful curve hooking the corner of his mouth. He's just an escort. It looks like the world government has sent the items they promised you. Oh? Linya's eyes lit up instantly, and he slapped the railing excitedly. My Shikasaiken is here. His shout wasn't quiet. On the deck, several legends who were drinking and boasting all pricked up their ears. Jihahaha. Golden Lion Shiki's signature laughter rang out. Floating in midair, he crossed his arms and looked down at Linyi. The Shikasaiken you've been looking forward to for so many days is finally coming? I want to see just how powerful it is to be worth you mentioning it every day. In the corner, Ryuma and Hawkeye, who were resting with their eyes closed, also slowly opened them upon hearing the word sword. Two equally sharp gazes crossed for a moment. Both had developed a strong interest in this sword that Linyi had specifically requested. Just what kind of fine sword could it be to compare to the black blades in their hands? Not long after, a white ship flying the flag of the world government broke through the waves and appeared before the Myriad Soul ship. Two figures stood on the deck. One was Admiral Kizaru, wearing his flashy yellow striped suit, hands lazily in his pockets as if he might fall asleep the next second. The other was a CP0 member wrapped in bandages, revealing only a pair of sinister eyes. Yo, if it isn't Admiral Kizaru. Long time no see. Lin Yi tapped his toes and leaped directly onto the other ship like a phantom, greeting Kizaru with a grin. Kizaru visibly rolled his eyes, his disgusted expression seemingly saying, "I don't want to see you at all," but he still responded lazily, "How scary, 4 emperors. Lin Yi, the speed at which your pirate crew's strength is growing is truly frighteningly fast." As he spoke, his gaze moved past Lin Yi to scan Ryuma, Hawkeye, and Jigoro, who had jumped over behind him. The expression under his sunglasses grew imperceptibly more solemn. This 10,000 Souls Pirates has added a few more incredible monsters. "Are you Lin Yi?" The CP0 member took a step forward, his voice as raspy as sandpaper rubbing together. "We are here on the orders of the Gorosei to deliver the Shikisaiken and the devil fruits to you." Lin Yi looked at him and nodded casually. "Where are the goods?" The CP0 member gave a look to his subordinates behind him. Soon, several CP agents carefully carried out something wrapped in sea stone chains like a giant iron dumpling. Lin Yi watched this, speechless. "It's just a sword, is there a need to be so careful?" He gestured, "Unwrap it." The CP0 member waved his hand, and the subordinates began to slowly undo the chains. When the layers of chains were removed, leaving only a heavy iron box, the CP0 member suddenly spoke up, "Lord Lin Yi, it would be better to take it back to your ship before. I haven't even inspected the goods yet. How do I know if you're trying to fool me with a fake?" Lin Yi ignored him completely and stepped forward, flipping open the lid of the iron box. "You!" The CP0 member wanted to stop him, but he was a step too late. V-room. A thick aura of slaughter, almost turning solid like a blood-colored storm, instantly erupted from the box. An entirely emerald green longsword lay quietly at the bottom of the box. The blade seemed to be condensed from the purest resentment and killing intent. Countless blurry, struggling phantoms of the dead circled and wailed around the blade, causing the temperature of the entire deck to drop several degrees. "Interesting." Lin Yi's eyes brightened, and he reached out without hesitation, grasping the hilt in his hand. "Careful." Seeing this from the Myriad Soul ship, Ryuma wanted to call out a warning. He could clearly feel an extremely ominous and evil will attached to that sword. However, in Lin Yi's eyes, this so-called Shikisaiken was nothing more than a murderous weapon bound with the souls of countless victims. As soon as he touched it, that evil demonic energy surged frantically up his arm, attempting to struggle, trying to control his mind and plunge him completely into an endless desire for slaughter. But before it could act out, Lin Yi simply frowned, and the majestic soul power within him, fused from the wills of countless top experts, gave a sudden jolt. The evil demonic energy on the sword was like a minor ghost seeing the king of hell. It instantly shrank back in fear like a quail, submissively hiding within the blade, not daring to act up again. Lin Yi stroked the cold blade with satisfaction, as if soothing a newly tamed pet. "Good, truly a fine sword." This scene left the nearby CP0 member dumbfounded, his eyes nearly popping out of his head and his mouth hanging open wide enough to fit an egg. How is that possible? How can he be completely unaffected? Lin Yi had no time to deal with his surprise. He put the Shikisaiken away and looked at him. "And the devil fruits?" The CP0 member finally snapped out of his daze and quickly responded. "WH what?" "Oh. The devil fruits. Quick, bring the devil fruits." Subsequently, 6 treasure chests carved with exquisite patterns were placed one by one before Lin Yi. The CP0 member added, "They are all devil fruits with powerful abilities. 1 Logia type, 1 ancient Zoan type, and 4 Paramecia types." "Ha ha ha, good." Lin Yi laughed and clapped his hands. "The Gorosei are quite generous. Then I will, reluctantly accept them all." The Elite 5 behind him immediately stepped forward and took over the 6 treasure chests. Standing to the side, Kizaru heard the lineup of these 6 devil fruits, especially since one of them was an incredibly precious Logia type, and his mouth twitched habitually, feeling a bit disgruntled. Was this a joke? The 3 marine admirals were all Logia users. Such a powerful devil fruit was just being handed over to a pirate for nothing? His gaze swept back and forth between Lin Yi, the elite 5 behind him, and the new faces. Roger, Redfield, Shiki, those most terrifying guys didn't seem to be there. A bold, almost insane idea suddenly welled up from the bottom of his heart. What if he took this opportunity to capture Lin Yi directly? What would happen? Just as this thought formed in his mind, zizzle! A blinding flash of lightning suddenly exploded on the deck. Redfield appeared before Kizaru like a ghost, so fast that even Kizaru, the user of the glint fruit, only had time to see a blur. His umbrella had already reached forward. Violent blue electrical arcs coiling around it, emitting a destructive aura. The tip of the umbrella was pointing steadily at Kizaru's throat. Kizaru. Redfield's voice was cold and devoid of emotion. Don't go looking for death. Kizaru froze, feeling as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over him. A drop of cold sweat instantly seeped from his forehead. He heard his inner thoughts? What terrifying observation, Haki! How scary! Kizaru immediately raised his hands in a gesture of surrender, his expression returning to that punchable, lazy look. Redfield, I wasn't thinking of doing anything at all. Lin Yi looked at Redfield, who had suddenly flashed over, and understood immediately. This Kizaru really isn't honest. Trying to play the capture the leader game? But even if Ride hadn't come over, the current Lin Yi was no longer that small-time character who had escaped from Impel Down. Never mind himself, with just Ryuma standing here, Kizaru would still have to return in failure today. However, Lin Yi's gaze fell on Redfield's umbrella sword wrapped in lightning, his eyes shining. Wow, thunderfire, ahem, this thunder sword. So cool, Ride. Chapter 95, The True Power of the Shikasaiken Clang. The air seemed to be sucked dry in an instant, leaving only the sharp sound of friction from blades being drawn. Ryuma, Jigoro, and Hawkeye all had their hands on their respective swords. Those 3 distinct yet equally sharp and extreme sword intents pressed down like 3 invisible mountains on the heads of Admiral Kizaru and that CP-0 agent. The atmosphere instantly became tense and ready for battle. All right, everyone calm down. Lin Yi glanced at the scene, which was on the verge of exploding, and waved his hand casually. He knew now was not the time for an all-out war with the Marine and the world government. Although he wasn't afraid of them, if they really started fighting, it would be troublesome to settle down and develop in the new world afterward. Put your swords away. He turned around and walked towards the Myriad Soul ship without looking back. Let's go. At the command, Ryuma and the others didn't hesitate. Their sword intents vanished instantly, and they sheathed their blades. The discipline and tacit understanding made the CP-0 agent's eyelids twitch. The group followed Lin Yi, slowly walking back. Finally, only Redfield remained. His eyes, capable of seeing through people's hearts, glanced faintly at Admiral Kizaru, but the warning in that gaze was more direct than 10,000 harsh words. Admiral Kizaru immediately spread his hands, his mouth curling into an exaggerated arc, signaling that he was harmless and would definitely not act rashly. Redfield snorted coldly, flashed, and a blue bolt of lightning cut through the dusk. He had disappeared from the spot and returned to the deck of the Myriad Soul ship. The CP-0 agent looked at this unbelievable speed, then turned to look at the lazy Admiral Kizaru, and finally couldn't help but speak, his tone full of questioning. Admiral Kizaru. We were threatened right to our faces, why didn't you make a move to teach them a lesson? In his understanding, wasn't an admiral the synonym for being invincible on this sea? How could anyone today force an admiral to the point where he didn't dare to move? Admiral Kizaru was speechless after hearing this. Where did this ignorant guy come from? He picked his ear and said lazily, my mission is already completed. It's off-duty time now, you can go if you want, but I won't work overtime. After speaking, he turned and walked away, sitting back down on his beach chair, lying down comfortably. However, after he lay down, the casual expression under his signature sunglasses quietly faded. Redfield's strength has reached another level. And he actually possessed that kind of lightning ability. Is it the Logia Rumble fruit? Scary Admiral Kizaru muttered in his heart. Now, Fleet Admiral Sengoku is going to have a headache again. The speed advantage that the Marine was proud of no longer existed in front of that man. And looking at the new faces on the Myriad Soul ship, that leading swordsman from Wano country had an aura that was definitely not inferior to any legend on the ship. The other two were also top-tier powerhouses. How long has it been since the Impel Down incident? The strength of the 10,000 Souls pirates was growing like a snowball. What on earth are those old guys in the world government thinking? Not only did they leave them alone, but they also actively provided the cursed sword and devil fruit to help the enemy. This operation is really incomprehensible, truly incomprehensible. On the other side, on the Myriad Soul ship, after Lin Yi returned to the deck, he began to carefully examine the Shikaseiken in his hand. The emerald green blade emitted an ominous, ghostly light. Just holding it in his hand, he could feel a vast power, formed by the resentment of countless departed souls, surging within the blade. Under the light of a red full moon, it could make the user's power grow exponentially, even causing meteorological anomalies, and in the awakened state, it could cause large-scale space distortion. For an ordinary user, they would gradually lose their self-awareness and fall into a state dominated by the desire to kill. It was indeed a powerful cursed sword. Of course. In the hands of Lin Yi, who possessed the 10,000 Souls banner to amplify his spiritual soul power countless times and was practically a freak, it couldn't cause any trouble at all. Come, let me see where your limit is. Lin Yi curled his lips, drove his own soul power, and like opening a floodgate, poured it crazily into the Shikaseiken. Buzz! The Shikaseiken suddenly shone brightly, and the emerald green light soared into the sky. The blade made an excited humming sound, like a fierce beast that had been hungry for 1,000 years, finally waiting for the most delicious feast. In the next second, a more pure and vast power fed back from the blade, pouring into Lin Yi's limbs and bones. This feeling. Lin Yi felt that all the cells in his body were cheering, and the sense of power stacked layer by layer, skyrocketing. It was like eating bullets momo fruit. Interesting. Lin Yi gripped the Shikaseiken tightly, feeling the surging power in his body, and casually swung his sword towards the sky. He didn't use haki, nor did he use his full strength. It was just such a light stroke. Swish! A condensed emerald green sword aura shot up into the sky, and the thick clouds in the sky were like a huge piece of tofu, silently and neatly cut in two by this sword aura. A bottomless canyon appeared above the sea of clouds. Whoa! Not bad, not bad. Lin Yi looked at the effect and was very happy. Both the power of the sword aura and his own strength had been greatly amplified. It's not over yet. Come again. His eyes lit up, and he increased the input of soul power again. The light on the Shikaseiken became more and more brilliant, and the humming of the blade became louder and higher. Finally, after a period of continuous infusion, the soul power absorbed by the Shikaseiken seemed to have reached a saturation point. Suddenly. Buzz! The Shikaseiken shook violently, as if it had resonated with something, and actually took the initiative to trigger the kingly qualification deep in Lin Yi's body, Conqueror's Haki. Boom! Lin Yi's Conqueror's Haki uncontrollably poured out of his body, intersecting, colliding, and merging with the emerald green demonic aura of the Shikaseiken. In the next second, an incredible scene happened. Crackle! Crackle! Black and red lightning, like ferocious magic dragons, suddenly burst out from the sword, crazily wrapping around the entire blade. That supreme spirit belonging only to a king was amplified several times through the Shikaseiken. Under the pressure of this terrifying haki, the surrounding space began to groan under the unbearable load, and visible distortions appeared. Everyone on the ship looked at this astonishing scene, their eyes wide, their jaws dropping to the ground. Roger's hearty smile froze on his face, replaced by endless shock and horror. He exclaimed, This is actually Conqueror's Haki infusion. Gahahahaha. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Golden Lion Shiki's signature laughter went out of tune. Lin Yi felt the terrifying power coming from the sword that could tear everything apart, and his whole body's blood was boiling. When this power condensed to a peak, his eyes shot out sharp light, and he slashed diagonally downwards at the sea in front of him. No sound. The world seemed to have been pressed on the mute button at this moment. I saw the sea in front of me, flattened by an invisible force, cut straight down by half. The smooth-cut surface looked like a huge mirror. Immediately after. Rumble. The delayed explosion came with a deafening sound. The flattened sea surface exploded violently. Around the sword aura, the black and red conqueror's hockey lightning raged crazily, twisting space, causing the entire ocean to deform, sink, and explode. The seawater was forcibly pushed away, forming a huge vacuum zone, and the deep seabed land was actually briefly exposed to the air under this blow. Lin Yi looked at this miraculous blow, felt the excited trembling in his arm, and could no longer suppress the ecstasy in his heart, laughing up to the sky. Ha ha ha! This is my holy sword. In one word, powerful. Chapter 96, Devil Fruits. Not far away, on the ship flying the world government flag, a CP0 agent was holding a transponder snail, reporting respectfully to the other end, "Gorosei-sama, the mission has been completed." Just as he finished reporting the mission. Boom! A terrifying aura that made one's heart and soul tremble suddenly exploded from the direction of the myriad soul ship, sweeping across the entire sea. The calm sea looked as if an invisible giant hand had forcibly torn open an abyss. Seawater poured in frantically, and the clouds in the sky were brutally pushed aside, revealing a huge hole. Sunlight cast down from the hole, yet it could not disperse that suffocating, overbearing aura. The transponder snail in the CP0 agent's hand almost dropped to the deck in fright. His entire body froze, and cold sweat instantly soaked the bandages on his back. He stared fixedly at that distorted, torn space, his mind a complete blank, leaving only a buzzing roar. At this moment, he finally understood. He understood why the marineford's highest combat power, Admiral Kizaru, had chosen to lie flat and slack off from beginning to end, not daring to make a move. What kind of joke was this? Was this world-destroying power really something humanly possible? Kizaru had stood up at some point. He adjusted his sunglasses, and his eternally lazy face was now filled with gravity. Although he didn't know which monster on the ship had unleashed that strike just now, this terrifying aura, which was not at all weaker than Kaido or Big Mom, and perhaps even a notch higher, was enough to explain everything. This newly appointed 4 emperors, after heading to the New World, would definitely stir up a bloodbath. The sky of the New World was about to change. Bulu bulu bulu. Kizaru picked up the transponder snail in his hand. It was Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Kizaru, what's the situation on your end? While the mission is complete, Kizaru scratched his head, seemingly organizing his words. However, the intelligence on the 10,000 Souls pirate seems to need an update. He paused, recalling those few newly appeared faces, especially that samurai swordsman who had made him feel wary. They have a few more monsters on their ship. The strength of 2 of those powerhouses is only slightly inferior to mine. But the most critical thing is, Kizaru took a deep breath and said solemnly, among them is a new samurai. I might not be his opponent. The other end of the transponder snail fell into a deathly silence. After a full 10 seconds, Sengoku's unbelievable roar exploded. What? Kizaru, are you joking with me? You're saying you might not be his opponent? How is that possible? Where did that guy Lin Yi find so many powerhouses? And another monster who is on the same level as Shiki and Bullet. Sengoku felt like he was about to have a heart attack. There's one more thing. Kizaru felt he should add more fuel to the fire for the fleet admiral, adding, Redfield, that Red Count, is suspected to have become a rumble fruit user. Nah. Nani? Sengoku's voice cracked, full of horror. Rumble fruit? That Logia devil fruit that disappeared from the seas for many years and is known as the strongest? One after another, every piece of news was like a heavy hammer, ruthlessly smashing against Sengoku's already overburdened heart. He no longer knew how to digest this despair-inducing intelligence. Ultimately, only a long, helpless sigh came through the transponder snail. Come back first, Kizaru. It looks like this 10,000 souls pirates that is about to enter the new world. Meanwhile, on the Myriad Souls ship. Everyone on the ship was still immersed in that world-destroying strike from just now, their mouths hanging open for a long time. As for the perpetrator, Lin Yi, he was admiring his masterpiece with a look of satisfaction. Haoshiku infusion. This thing was truly extraordinary. With this move, he had truly obtained the entry ticket to the top of the world. Refreshing. He contentedly hung the shikasaiken at his waist. As for the foam run? Who was that? It had already been mothballed. Then, Lin Yi walked leisurely to the 6 treasure chests he had extorted from the world government. Let me see what kind of good treasures the Gorosei have sent. He rubbed his hands and stepped forward to open the 6 boxes one by one. In each box lay a devil fruit with strange spiral patterns, and beside it was a thoughtfully attached slip of paper stating the fruit's ability. Lin Yi looked through them one by one. Paramecia, rust fruit, doa nomi, sub nomi, bane nomi. Zoan, toad fruit, ancient model, Beelzebufo. Oh. There's even a Logia? He picked up the last slip of paper, his eyes lighting up. Logia, swamp fruit. Not bad, not bad. The Gorosei were quite generous this time. Lin Yi chuckled, these are all fruits with high development potential. The swamp fruit, although used by that idiot caribou in the original work as a specialized sack for human trafficking, was still an incredibly rare Logia. Its potential was definitely not to be underestimated. And that doa nomi. Lin Yi's gaze fell on that special fruit, the corners of his mouth curling up wildly. This was a rare space-type divine skill. With it, wouldn't going anywhere just be a matter of opening a door? It was simply an essential item for home travel, murder, robbery, escaping, and sneak attacks. With proper development, it could not only transport people but also send magma, seawater, and bombs right into the enemy's face. This one is good. Lin Yi decided on the spot, taking the doa nomi directly and beckoning to the leader of the Elite 5, Number 1. Number 1, come here. Boss. Number 1 immediately stepped forward and knelt respectfully on one knee. This is your reward. Lin Yi handed the doa nomi to him. Then, a dark light flashed in his eyes as he activated the deep power of the 10,000 Souls banner. Buzz. An invisible soul binding force instantly enveloped the doa nomi. After the development level of the 10,000 Souls banner had significantly increased, he could now forcibly bind and extract the demon soul residing inside the fruit. Come out. A blurry phantom in the shape of a doorframe was forcibly dragged out of the fruit, letting out a silent wail. Then, Lin Yi flicked his finger, driving this soul directly into Number 1's soul body. Under Number 1's astonished gaze, Lin Yi's 10,000 Souls banner power wrapped around him, helping him forcibly digest and absorb this brand new power. A few seconds later, Number 1 snapped his eyes open, his gaze filled with disbelief. He tentatively raised his hand and made a light swipe at the air in front of him. Swoosh! An air door emitting spatial fluctuations appeared out of thin air. On the other side of the door was the scene at the ship's stern. Yo-ho! It worked! Lin Yi clapped his hands excitedly. This doa nomi, which could traverse the world, not only greatly enhanced the mobility of the 10,000 Souls pirates but, more importantly, it could perfectly assist Redfield in spreading his intelligence network across the entire world. A perfect match. Next, Lin Yi threw that Logia swamp fruit to the logistics guy. John, this is for you. For now, it can be used as an oversized storage space. Lin Yi patted his shoulder. In the future, it'll depend on your development. Don't embarrass the Logia class. Captain. Thank you for your cultivation. I will definitely not let you down. Captain John held the Logia swamp fruit, moved to tears. Lin Yi didn't leave out any of the remaining 4 fruits, bestowing them upon Number 2 through Number 5 respectively. In an instant, the Myriad Souls ship gained 6 more devil fruit users. After doing all this, Lin Yi stretched, looking at the sunset that had completely dipped below the horizon in the distance, his heart filled with heroic ambition. Chapter 97, A Letter from Mingo. Trading on a deserted island on the deck of the Myriad Soul ship, the sea breeze carried a slightly salty scent. Hawkeye my hawk, the future world's greatest swordsman, sat cross-legged at the bow like a statue, eyes tightly shut. Yet the sharp aura surrounding him was like an unsheathed blade, even the seabirds dared not approach. Lin Yi leaned against the railing, tossing an apple in his hand as he watched the scene, feeling quite amused. Since this guy joined the ship, aside from eating and using the bathroom, he spent his time either meditating or dragging veteran swordsmen like Ryuma and Roger into discussions about the way of the sword. His obsession was so intense it was as if he were possessed. Truly the king of tryhards. Lin Yi took a crunching bite of the apple and muttered indistinctly, "That thirst for the way of the sword, it really makes me want to sign him up for a 996 blessing shift." Just then, a sudden, urgent, and rhythmic sound echoed from the cabin. Puro 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 puro, the transponder snail was ringing. Swish. Before Lin Yi could speak, the air beside him was pulled open like a curtain. An arm reached out from that air door, appearing out of thin air, precisely grabbing the vibrating transponder snail from the table inside the cabin before retracting. The entire process was seamless, moving so fast it left only an afterimage. Number 1, the leader of the Elite 5 and the new user of the DOA Nomi, stood not far from Lin Yi, respectfully holding the transponder snail as he answered it. The eyes and mouth of the transponder snail contorted, quickly mimicking the expression of the caller, wearing a pair of arrogant flamingo sunglasses with a grin stretching to the ears, exuding a sense of wickedness. It was Da Flamingo. Fa 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 fu fu. That signature laughter came from the transponder snail's mouth. This is Da Flamingo. Is Lin Yi there? Da Flamingo, number 1's voice was devoid of emotion. What business do you have with our captain? Tell your captain, the transponder snail's grin widened even further, that the thing he wanted is ready for him. Lin Yi's eyebrows shot up. He finished the apple in a few bites, tossed the core aside, and beckoned to Number 1. Understanding the gesture, Number 1 handed over the transponder snail. Hey! It's Mingo. Lin Yi picked up the transponder snail, his tone as relaxed as if he were chatting with an old friend. The Devil Fruit Encyclopedia is ready, right? Yes, Captain Lin Yi. Da Flamingo's voice carried a hint of pleasure from a deal being struck. When would you like to trade the deposit for our cooperation? The corpses of the powerhouses I promised you are being collected as we speak. Good, Lin Yi smiled. I'm nearly at Sabaody Archipelago. Have your people get ready to hand over the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia, and I'll give you a portion of the deposit. Fa 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 fu fu. Very well. I look forward to our successful cooperation. Click. The call ended. Lin Yi tossed the transponder snail back to Number 1, who opened another door and precisely returned it to the cabin. With that done, Lin Yi turned his gaze toward the bow. My hawk. Hawkeye slowly opened those sharp, hawk-like eyes and looked at him. I'll find a small deserted island near Sabaody Archipelago for you to have a good exchange and spar with Ryuma. How does that sound? Lin Yi winked at him. Exclamation point. Hawkeye's eyes instantly lit up. The intensity was frightening. Over the past few days, simply listening to Ryuma and the others explain their insights into the way of the sword had benefited him immensely, making him feel as if he were touching a whole new realm. But theory was just theory, he had long wanted to put it to the test. He yearned for a real battle with this legendary swordsman to digest those insights. Fine. Then I thank you. Hawkeye's voice betrayed an irrepressible excitement as he quickly agreed. Not far away, Ryuma also slowly nodded his head in agreement. At the 2 o'clock position, there is a suitable small island. The Red Count, Redfield, who had been resting with his eyes closed by the mast, suddenly spoke up calmly. Ha, then let's drop them off first. With a wave of Lin Yi's hand, the Myriad Soul ship adjusted its course and headed in the direction Redfield indicated. Before long, a lush green island appeared before them. However, despite it being called a deserted island, 2 ships were anchored at the shore. One flew an unknown pirate flag, while the other had no markings at all, looking quite suspicious. Redfield slowly closed his eyes. His top-tier observation hockey was instantly released, sweeping across the entire island like an invisible radar. In his perceptual field of vision, the conversation on the beach surfaced clearly. A fierce-looking pirate with a face full of scars was sneering at several men in sophisticated black suits. "We have quite a lot of good goods this time. Did you bring enough money?" The leader of the men in black pushed up his glasses and replied coldly, "Rest assured, we can take as many good goods as you have. We are doing this for the world nobles." Before he could finish, the pirate waved his hand. His subordinates immediately pushed out rows of people with bound hands and numb expressions, men, women, old and young, all treated like livestock. Sensing this, Redfield snapped his eyes open, his gaze icy. He turned and recounted everything he had seen to Lin Yi and the others on the ship. A slave ship is trading slaves. As soon as the words fell, what? Outrageous! A roar like a thunderclap erupted on the deck. Chigoro of the Wind, the Wano country samurai who had once fought to the death to protect his family, was now trembling with rage. His face, which usually held a gentle smile, was flushed red with bulging veins. These bastards! To actually engage in such a heinous business! Clang! The sword at his waist suddenly unsheathed. Without waiting for Lin Yi's command, he swung several gale-like sword slashes through the air toward the island. Swoosh! 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 Several sharp slashes tore through the air, precisely striking the sand between the two groups, kicking up a cloud of dust and instantly forcing them apart. Using this momentum, the myriad souls ship rapidly approached the island. Jigoro bent his legs and launched himself like a cannonball, tracing an arc through the air before landing heavily in the middle of the groups. Boom! A shallow crater was smashed into the beach, smoke and dust filling the air. The pirates and the men in black involved in the trade were both shocked and enraged by this sudden intrusion. "Who are you? You're looking for death. Get him. Kill this fool who doesn't know his place." The scene instantly fell into chaos. The pirates and the slave ship crew all drew their weapons and charged toward Jigoro with roars of anger. Jigoro's eyes were bloodshot, his fury having long since incinerated his reason. Gripping his sword with both hands, he slashed down at the charging crowd, blow after blow. There were no fancy moves, only the purest rage and power. Splatter! Blood sprayed, and screams of agony rose one after another. Jigoro was like a god of slaughter. Every time his blade fell, a life was surely taken. The scene turned bloody in an instant. Just then, the leader of the slave ship, a man who looked quite shrewd, did not charge forward. Instead, he looked up with uncertainty and fear at the approaching black pirate ship, which was as massive as a sea fortress. His gaze fixed onto the flag fluttering in the wind, a pirate flag marked with the 10,000 Souls banner, exuding an ominous aura. In the next second, all color drained from his face. His pupils shrank to the size of pinpricks, and his lips trembled as he let out a terrified scream as if he had seen a ghost. This is, the 10,000 Souls pirates of the Four Emperors, Demon Emperor of 10,000 Souls Lin Yi. In his line of work, the most important thing was having a keen eye. One had to memorize the information of the world's major powers and those powerful pirate crews that absolutely must not be provoked. Because of this, he was able to recognize the flag immediately. Even though the flag of the 10,000 Souls pirates had only been flying for a short time. With their brutal track record and the illustrious, terrifying name they had carved out for themselves, this flag had already become known throughout the world the moment it appeared. Chapter 98, Dealing with the Buffoons, Firm Convictions. Hurry up! The slave ship leader's tongue was tied as he pointed at the giant black ship in the distance that looked like it had sailed out of hell, his voice trembling like autumn leaves in the wind. The thugs beside him clearly lacked his keen eyes and thought their boss was urging them to work faster, responding one by one with howls. Yes, yes, yes. Sir, we'll hurry right now. A guy with a face full of scars brandished his scimitar with a whistle. Wipe out this pirate crew that doesn't know its place. Brothers, follow me. Charge. Kill them. With that, more than half of these idiots split off, brandishing knives and guns, shouting as they rushed toward the myriad soul ship that had just come to a stop. The slave ship leader watched this scene, his vision going dark, nearly ascending to heaven on the spot from the sheer anger caused by his pig-like teammates. "STST, stop for me!" he roared with all his might, his face turning the color of pig liver. "I said for you to stop quickly. You bastards, damn it!" However, his order was ultimately a step too late. Or rather, it was already far too late. Boom crack! ZZZZT. The cloudless clear sky darkened without warning. Dozens of lightning pillars thicker than buckets, like the wrathful spears of gods, tore through the atmosphere, carrying a destructive pressure, and struck precisely on the heads of those charging fools. Heart-wrenching screams instantly echoed across the beach. In the lightning, their skeletons were clearly visible, like a clumsy shadow play. In just a second, the screams stopped abruptly, and everyone turned into charred remains emitting black smoke, falling unconscious onto the sand. The slave ship leader stared blankly at this scene, feeling a warmth in his crotch as a warm stream flowed down his leg, and a strong stench immediately filled the air. On the other side, his trading partners, that group of pirates, had also been taken down by Jigoro like chopping melons and vegetables, leaving only one man left. Blood stained the sand red. Jigoro held his dripping long blade and slowly turned around, his eyes burning with fury locked onto the only living person still standing. Ugh! Stared at by that murderous gaze, the slave ship leader's legs felt like lead, and he couldn't even muster the courage to run. Just then, on the myriad soul ship, Lin Yi led a group of figures, leisurely walking down from the deck. Survival instinct finally overcame fear. The leader didn't care about his weak legs anymore, scrambling on all fours toward Lin Yi. Clang! Number One's figure appeared before him like a ghost, his long blade unsheathed half an inch, the cold edge blocking his path. "Lord Lin Yi! Lord Lin Yi," he shouted hoarsely across the blade, "please be magnanimous. These slaves are all yours. And the treasures on our ship, they're all gifts for you. I hope you can let me go." As he spoke, he caught out frantically, hitting the sand with a thudding sound. Lin Yi didn't even bother to lift an eyelid, as if he were just a piece of annoying air. Seeing that Lin Yi ignored him, and catching Jigoro's vicious gaze approaching step by step, with blood still dripping from the blade's tip, the intense killing intent made him feel cold all over, his gall nearly bursting. In desperation, he suddenly looked up, putting on a threatening face. "Lin Yi! I am a subordinate of the world nobles. You dare touch me? That would be making an enemy of the world. If you let me go, I can introduce you to the noble lords. Treasures, riches. You'll definitely have plenty. Think carefully, making an enemy of the world nobles. So noisy." Lin Yi finally grew impatient. Without turning his head, he just casually waved his left hand. Whoosh! An afterimage flashed. Jigoro's figure instantly appeared in front of the leader, his long blade drawing a cold arc pucci. A head flew into the sky, the expression of shock and disbelief frozen on the face. The headless corpse swayed and crashed to the ground. Jigoro slowly wiped the blood off the blade and returned it to its sheath, finally venting some of the frustration in his chest. Lin Yi's gaze finally fell on the group of rescued slaves. They huddled together shivering, their eyes filled with numbness and terror. There were not only strong men and haggard women, but even many children with tear stains on their faces. Looking at their tragic state, a surge of anger flared up in Lin Yi's heart, even more intense than Jigoro's earlier fury. With a wave of his right hand, the huge 10,000 souls banner appeared out of thin air, its black surface fluttering in the wind. He pointed the banner at the still smoking charred remains and the corpses just cut down by Jigoro. "Get out here!" With a cold shout, distorted souls were forcibly detained from the corpses, wailing as they were sucked into the 10,000 souls banner. Lin Yi glanced at the mountain-sized figure inside the 10,000 souls banner and called out coldly, "Ors! I've prepared some dessert for you." Lin Yi's voice was devoid of emotion. "Chew them slowly and savor them well." Or's muffled voice sounded, carrying a hint of excitement. "Okay, thank you, Captain." As soon as he finished speaking, from within the 10,000 souls banner came the terrified cries for help and heart-wrenching wails of those souls, as if they were experiencing the most horrific torture in the world. Hearing these sounds, the fire in Lin Yi's heart finally felt a bit better. Then, he waved his hand at number 1. Arranged to send them to the nearest marine base. He paused, then added, "Keep an eye on the marines' movements, don't let them go from the wolf's den into the tiger's mouth." Yes. Number 1 and the Elite 5 immediately sprang into action. They restrained their killing intent, carefully comforted the frightened slaves, and then used a ship on the shore to take them toward the nearest marine base. Roger walked to Lin Yi's side, looking at his grim face, and lightly patted his shoulder, comforting him. Under the leadership of the so-called nobles, this world has long since rotted to the core. What we need to do is increase our strength as quickly as possible so that we can overthrow them in the future and make the right changes for this world. Jihahaha. Golden Lion Shiki floated over, grinning wildly, these hypocritical and selfish fellows. In the future, I'll take islands and smash them all into the sea. Everyone on the ship was now looking at Lin Yi with trusting and firm gazes. Looking at these companions who held high expectations for him, Lin Yi took a deep breath, the frustration in his chest swept away, and he regained his spirit. Good. He clenched his fists, his eyes becoming incredibly sharp. Then I'll rely on all of you to join me in pulling this rotten world government and the nobles off their pedestals, step by step. Ha ha ha, good. Yo ho ho ho, you're so motivated, Mr. Lin Yi. Hawkeye stood to the side, watching these high-spirited legends and the shared flame burning in their eyes. His heart also stirred. He suddenly felt a sense of fortune. Fortunate that he could join this great ideal and goal that might change the whole world. Chapter 99, The Clash of Swordsman. Golden Lion Shiki's iconic jihaha cackle echoed over the beach. He raised his hands, and an invisible force instantly swirled across the entire stretch of sand. Whoosh! A violent wind suddenly rose, sending sand and stones flying. The blood-stained corpses and severed limbs on the ground, along with the crimson-dyed sand, were forcibly torn from the earth by this power and swept into the air, forming a massive, bloody sandstorm. Go! With a wave of Shiki's arm, the mass of filth drifted grandly toward the ocean. In midair, it scattered like flower petals before plunging into the sea with a loud splash. In an instant, the calm surface of the sea seemed to boil as countless sharks, drawn by the scent of blood, leapt frantically to fight over the feast falling from the sky, kicking up sprays of white foam. Within a few seconds, the beach that had looked like a Shura field just moments ago was restored to its clean and tidy state, as if the bloody massacre had never occurred. The group was long used to this, no one spared it a second glance. Lin Yi clapped his hands and said to Hawkeye, Ryuma, and the others, "My Hawk, Ryuma, you go ahead. This island is big enough for you to let loose. I'm going to head over to Sabaody Archipelago for a look. Once you're done fighting, meet us there." Fine. Hawkeye's reply was crisp and decisive, his eyes already burning with battle intent. He, Ryuma, and Jigoro, who was also itching for a fight, the three top-tier swordsmen, were preparing to set off. Jihahaha. Golden Lion Shiki suddenly floated over, rubbing his hands together with a face full of excitement. My old bones haven't moved in a long time, and I'm itching for a fight. How about including me? Hawkeye glanced at him with his hawk-like eyes and gave a stoic nod of agreement. He never turned down a challenge from the strong. Lin Yi sized up the eager Golden Lion and chuckled. It looks like you've really been cooped up for too long. Fine, you go along with them too. He pointed to the slave ship not far away. Look, those guys left a ship here. It's yours. Jihaha, then thanks, Captain. Shiki's grin practically reached his ears as he transformed into a golden streak of light, catching up to Hawkeye and the others. The four figures quickly vanished into the depths of the jungle. Watching their departing backs, Lin Yi willed it, and the massive 10,000 souls banner unfurled behind him. Vast waves, come out, he called toward the banner. Aeon, a deep cry resonated from within the banner, and then a behemoth was summoned. A creature entirely azure and as large as an island rolled in the shallow waters, it was Vast Waves. Spit out my big gold pillar. It obediently opened its massive maw toward the beach and let out a poof. Asterisk tomb. Asterisk a shimmering, outrageously thick and massive golden pillar was spat out, crashing heavily onto the beach. The entire island shuddered 3 times from the impact. Wow! Captain John, who had been following behind, stared wide-eyed at the gargantuan object. His eyes turned into Barry's symbols, and drool poured down like a waterfall. So big. So thick. Such a long gold pillar. Lin Yi looked at his pathetic display, curled his lip in disgust, stepped forward, and delivered a kick. Get out of here! Ouch! John fell onto his backside, looking aggrieved. This gold pillar is in your charge from now on, my logistics minister, Lin Yi announced, crossing his arms. Hearing this, John instantly revitalized. His face flushed with excitement as he scrambled over. Is it true? Captain? Is this a reward for me? In your dreams. Lin Yi gave him a flick on the forehead. Part of this is for trading with Doflamingo, and the other part is for the expenses of helping Ride set up an intelligence network. If you dare steal even a little bit. Lin Yi narrowed his eyes, his warning gaze like 2 knives stabbing straight into John's heart. John shuddered, feeling a chill down his spine as cold sweat broke out. He quickly stood at attention and patted his chest in promise. Why yes, Captain. I promise. I guarantee all this gold will be used exactly where it's supposed to be. Good. Lin Yi nodded in satisfaction, then turned to Redfield and instructed, Ride, keep an eye on him. Redfield gave a faint nod. His shrewd eyes, which seemed capable of seeing through people's hearts, locked onto John like spotlights. John felt extremely uncomfortable under his gaze, and his cold sweat flowed even more freely. Oh, and Ride, Lin Yi added, use your rumble fruit ability to divide this gold pillar. John, once we reach Sabaody Archipelago, you'll be the one to trade with Doflamingo's people. Give them a suitable piece as a down payment first. John saw the faint, mocking smile in Redfield's eyes and didn't dare harbor any ulterior motives. He nodded like a chicken pecking at grain. Understood, Captain. Redfield didn't trouble him further. He raised his right hand, lightning flickering in his palm. Zzzzzzzzzzzzzt, blinding arcs of electricity instantly enveloped the massive gold pillar. Amidst the deafening roar of thunder, the hard gold was rapidly melted and sliced like a hot knife through butter. In less than 20 seconds, the solid pillar had been transformed into a pile of over 1,000 gold bricks of varying sizes. John watched in slack-jawed amazement. He then activated his swamp fruit ability, his body turning into a pool of mud as he swallowed the gold bricks one by one, filling his body. Lin Yi didn't return vast waves to the 10,000 souls banner, allowing it to frolic in the nearby waters alongside the myriad soul ship. With everything ready, the group returned to the ship and set sail toward the Sabaody Archipelago. Meanwhile, at the center of the island. Clang, the sound of clashing metal exploded. The battle between Hawkeye Mihawk and the sword god Ryuma had already reached a fever pitch. Slash! Hawkeye's gaze sharpened. He swung the black blade, Yoro, unleashing several incredibly powerful cyan sword slashes that tore through the atmosphere, sealing off all of Ryuma's paths of retreat. Facing this fierce assault, Ryuma remained calm and composed. With a few casual swings of his sword, he shattered the cyan slashes one by one, neutralizing them. Not bad, Ryuma praised. Hawkeye remained solemn and did not respond. He stomped the ground, closing the distance to Ryuma in a flash. Gripping the hilt tightly with both hands, he combined the weight of the black blade, Yoro, with his own strength and brought it down in a savage overhead strike. Ryuma didn't dodge. He held the black blade Shusui horizontally, effortlessly blocking the thunderous blow. His expression was relaxed, even carrying a hint of faint admiration as he looked at this vibrant, battle-hungry junior before him. Hawkeye's brow furrowed. His sharp eyes scanned Ryuma's form, searching for even the slightest opening. However, the other man's seemingly casual parries were airtight and perfectly natural, giving Hawkeye the sensation of a tiger trying to swallow the sky. Nowhere to start. He could only keep slashing, accelerating, and slashing again. Clang! 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 The two black blades clashed violently in the air, sparks flying. Every collision felt like a confrontation between the wills of the old era and the new. Jihahaha. Include me too. /wave. Golden Lion also laughed as he joined the fray, dragging Jigoro in as well. Shiki completely abandoned his fruit abilities, relying solely on his two famous blades, Sakuraju and Kagurashi. Jigoro's sword was as swift as the wind. Thus, the four top-tier swordsmen began a massive free-for-all. For a moment, sword chi crisscrossed the center of the island. Four powerful auras cyan, red, blue, and gold soared into the sky, clashing and intertwining violently above the island. Anything that came within their range, whether towering ancient trees or hard rocks, was sliced into clean pieces by the stray sword chi. These four powerful auras, none yielding to the others, eventually merged into a world-destroying storm that swept across the entire island. Chapter 100, The Arrogant Marine Rear Admiral. Sabayeti. Archipelago, Marine Station Base 66. A temporarily commandeered pirate ship wobbled as it docked. Number 1, the leader of the Elite Five, was the first to jump down. Following closely behind, a group of ragged, numb-looking people emerged from the cabin like frightened quails. Supporting each other, they shuffled onto the pier with unsteady steps. The door to the base office pushed open with a creak, and a man wearing a Marine Rear Admiral's uniform stepped out, his face etched with signs of debauchery and impatience. His name was Scat, the highest-ranking officer of this base. When his gaze fell upon the disheveled cargo on the pier, his brow instantly furrowed into a knot, his voice filled with offended rage. "Who goes there?" he barked sharply. "Have you grown a pair of lion's balls? How dare you sell slaves on marine territory?" Number 1 met him with an expressionless face and explained in a flat tone, "We rescued them from a slave ship. You Marines are responsible for taking them in and sending these people back to their respective hometowns." Rear Admiral Scat acted as if he had heard the world's biggest joke. He looked Number 1 up and down, his eyes full of disdain and suspicion. "Who do you think you are? No, what kind of ghost thing are you? To dare run out in broad daylight and talk nonsense, even ordering me around?" He suddenly pointed at the trembling slaves, his voice rising an octave. "I see it clearly now. You bunch of lonely ghosts are the ones causing trouble, having stolen and kidnapped these slaves. You're simply looking for death." Number 1 was completely speechless. What on earth was this? This logic was even more outrageous than the weather on the Grand Line. It was true they were souls, but if he had eyes and looked at the state of these slaves, did it look like they were being kidnapped by them? Number 2 had a fiery temper and exploded on the spot. "Are you blind? Can't you see these people are grateful to us?" From the crowd, an exceptionally burly man gathered his courage and shouted at Scat, "Yes, Lord Marine. We were indeed rescued from the slave ship by these masters. They are good people." "Shut up!" Scat interrupted him unceremoniously, his spit nearly flying into the man's face. "Is it your place to speak here? Who knows if your minds have been bewitched by these ghost things, making you talk nonsense?" He waved his hand, murderous intent surging. "Men! Take them all down!" Clatter! Over 100 Marine soldiers rushed out of the base, their dark muzzles all aimed at the Elite Five. Number 1's gaze turned completely cold, and a faint killing intent began to permeate the air. "We are from the Four Emperors' 10,000 Souls Pirates. Are you sure you want to move against us so indiscriminately?" That icy killing intent made the front row of Marine soldiers instinctively shudder. But Scat was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He jumped up instantly and laughed until he doubled over. "Ha ha ha ha! Where did these lonely ghosts come from, daring to impersonate the name of the 10,000 Souls Pirates? Who are you trying to scare?" He arrogantly pointed at his own nose. "Let me tell you, this is a Marine base. It's not far from the Marine headquarters, Marineford. I don't care if you're from the 10,000 Souls Pirates or not, even if you are, once you're on my turf, you'd better coil up. Bow your heads properly for me." Holy crap! Number 2 stomped his feet in anger. "I've never seen such an arrogant Marine. Scat waved his hand triumphantly, his face looking incredibly punchable. "Ah," he drawled, "today, you've seen one. You mother." Number three's fists were already cracking. "Even your marine hero Garp and the admirals wouldn't dare speak to our 10,000 souls pirates like that. You, a mere rear admiral, dare to lay a hand on us?" He took a step forward, looking ready to rush up and show this ignorant fellow a thing or two. "Wait." Number one reached out to stop him and expressionlessly pulled out a transponder snail from his robes. Puru 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 puru. Aboard the Myriad Souls ship, Lin Yi was leaning back in a lounge chair enjoying the sea breeze. Hearing the transponder snail ring, he picked it up with some surprise. "Hello? Number one, didn't you go to the marine base to deliver those rescued people? Is the mission complete?" Number one's voice was as calm as still water, yet it carried an underlying pressure like a gathering storm. "Boss, we've encountered a bit of trouble. The rear admiral of this marine base thinks we are the slave traders and wants to move against us." "Ha?" Lin Yi almost thought he had misheard. "What was that? Didn't you give our name?" "I did." Number one's tone took on a hint of mockery, but he doesn't buy it. He even clamored for our entire 10,000 souls pirates to bow our heads to the Marines. There was a second of silence on the other end of the transponder snail. Then, Lin Yi's voice came through with a hint of a smile, yet it was so cold it lacked any warmth. "Good. Very courageous. Since that's the case, there's no need to waste words with them. Directly take down this entire marine base. Then notify Marine headquarters and tell them to crawl over here and give an explanation." Lin Yi paused before adding, "Does he think he's an admiral too? If we took down an admiral, Marineford really would fight us to the death. But a mere little rear admiral dares to prick us? Attack directly. Don't let the name of our 10,000 souls pirates be disgraced." "Understood, boss." A very kind and amiable smile slowly appeared on number one's face. "Rest assured, we will let them know the methods of our 10,000 souls pirates." Click. The transponder snail hung up. The other four of the Elite Five all looked at number one. They had clearly heard Lin Yi's orders just now. The five of them exchanged glances, and identical, kind smiles appeared on their faces simultaneously. Those smiles made the Marine soldiers opposite them feel a chill in their hearts, and the hands holding their guns began to tremble involuntarily. Scat was still clamoring, "What are you smiling for? Want to beg for mercy? Let me tell you, it's too late. You'll have to." He couldn't finish his sentence. Because number three could no longer hold back. Whoosh! An afterimage flashed by. His feet seemed to have powerful springs installed. A deep pit was stomped into the ground as he shot out like a cannonball, appearing in front of Scat in an instant. "You!" Before the arrogance on Scat's face could fade, a fist the size of a clay pot rapidly enlarged in his pupils. There was no sound of wind, no extra movements. Only extreme speed and power. Time seemed to slow down at this moment. Under everyone's horrified gazes, number three's fist slammed hard into Scat's face. Scat's cheek began to twist and deform at a speed visible to the naked eye. His cheekbone caved in deeply, and his features were squeezed together like a piece of crumpled wastepaper. Boom! A thunderous explosion. Scat was sent flying back as if hit head-on by a battering ram, knocking over 7 or 8 Marine soldiers along the way before smashing violently into the base building behind them. A huge human-shaped hole was left in the wall, dust filled the air, and his fate was unknown. The entire scene was deathly silent. The remaining Marine soldiers' brains hadn't even processed what happened when they discovered with horror that the firearms they held tightly were rusting and decaying at an incredible speed. Crack, crack. Amidst the crisp sounds of shattering, brand new muskets turned into piles of useless rust within seconds, slipping from their hands. This was the ability of number 2, the rust fruit. Before they could recover from the shock of their weapons being scrapped. Rib bit. A strange frog croak rang out. Number 5's figure twisted in place, instantly swelling into a 5-meter-tall ancient species devil frog covered in poison glands. Its huge, lantern-like eyes scanned the crowd, and it suddenly opened its bloody maw, which took up half its head. Swoosh! A thick tongue, thicker than an adult's thigh and covered in mucus, swept out like a battering ram. Carrying a howling, foul wind, it whipped fiercely into the densest part of the Marine soldiers. Bang! 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 The crisp sounds of breaking bones and shrill screams joined together. Dozens of Marine soldiers were sent flying by this giant tongue, spitting blood and losing consciousness mid-air. Fire! 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 A quick-reacting Marine officer roared hoarsely, but the only response he got was deathly silence and the terrified gazes of his comrades. The devil frog's massive body leaped, smashing into the crowd like a small mountain. Foul-smelling poison sprayed from the glands on its skin like a green acid rain. Ah! My face! Help! I've been poisoned. Any Marine touched by the poison immediately had their skin start to fester with a sizzling sound. One by one, they screamed and fell to the ground twitching, losing their combat effectiveness instantly. In just a few dozen seconds, the entire Marine base had turned into a living hell. Chapter 101, Reinforcements from Marineford Thud. A Marine non-commissioned officer, his face covered in blood, scrambled and fell into the communications room. He crawled toward the desk on all fours, his trembling hands failing several times to grasp the receiver of the transponder snail. Outside, shrill screams and the thunderous roar of some giant beast crushing buildings rose and fell, mixed with the stench of rust and venom. It was as if the gates of hell had swung wide open. Pick up, pick up! The officer cried out, finally grabbing the receiver. Bulu 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 bulu. Marine Headquarters, Marineford. The communications room was a hive of activity. A young intelligence officer boredly picked up a ringing transponder snail. Moshi Moshi, this is Marineford. From the other end of the transponder snail came a panicked, distorted roar mixed with the sound of explosions. This is Base 66 on Sabaody Archipelago. We are under attack by pirates, ghosts. Quick, hurry. Requesting reinforcements from Marineford. The intelligence officer froze for a moment and instinctively asked, pirates, ghosts? What on earth? They claim to be, from the 10,000 Souls pirates. Nanny! The pen in the young intelligence officer's hand dropped to the floor with a click. He looked as if he had been struck by lightning, instantly springing up from his chair. The Four Emperors Demon Emperor of 10,000 Souls Lignez. 10,000 Souls pirates. The color drained completely from his face. No longer caring about procedures, he grabbed the emergency report he had just recorded and rushed like a madman toward the Fleet Admiral's office. Reporting to the Fleet Admiral. Important intelligence. A knock sounded on the door of Sengoku's office. Inside the office, Fleet Admiral Sengoku was pressing his throbbing temples. The mountain of documents in front of him almost buried him alive. Those three emperors in the New World were still clashing, their spheres of influence overlapping. Every day, there were still reckless fools who went to challenge them, causing unrest in various affiliated nations. Complaint letters flew in like snowflakes. Ever since he took over this mess from Commander-in-Chief Kong, he hadn't had a single night of good sleep. Damn it! He cursed irritably, suppressing his anger. Enter! The signalman rushed in immediately. He snapped to attention and saluted, his voice trembling with fear. Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Base 66 on Sabaody Archipelago has been attacked by the 10,000 Souls pirates. They are requesting reinforcements from headquarters. What did you say? Sengoku snapped his head up, his sharp eyes glaring at the signalman as if trying to burn two holes through him. The 10,000 Souls pirates attacked a marine base? Why yes, that's what the personnel requesting help from Base 66 reported. The signalman broke into a cold sweat under his gaze and repeated it. Sengoku's brow furrowed, and he leaned forward instinctively. Why would they suddenly attack our base? Do we know which powerhouses of the 10,000 Souls pirates are involved? Is Roger there? Unclear, the signalman quickly replied. Currently, we only know it's an attack by the 10,000 Souls pirates, but we haven't heard the name of any legendary pirate appearing in this attack. Hearing this, Sengoku's tense nerves relaxed slightly. As long as those legendary monsters weren't personally taking the field, there was still room for maneuver. He nodded and waved his hand. Good. You may leave. Also, go call Admiral Kizaru for me. Yes. Fleet Admiral. The signalman felt as if he had been granted a pardon. He saluted and beat a hasty retreat. Before long, Marine Admiral Kizaru, Borsellino, strolled in with his signature lazy gait, swaying slightly. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, he drawled, his face looking like he hadn't fully woken up. I just got back, my seat isn't even warm yet. Why have you called me here again? Borsellino. Sengoku was in no mood for jokes, his expression so serious it could drip water. The 10,000 Souls pirates have attacked Marine Base 66 on the Sabaody archipelago. The laziness on Kizaru's face faltered slightly, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes behind his lenses. Why would they suddenly attack our marine base for no reason? The specific situation is still unclear, Sengoku said deeply. However, Roger and the others shouldn't be present. It might just be a few minor characters from the 10,000 Souls pirates making trouble. Work hard and take another trip. Upon hearing that those legendary old monsters weren't present, Kizaru immediately felt much more relaxed, his tone returning to that punchable drawl. Kawaii, he scratched his head. Then remember to count my overtime pay, Fleet Admiral Sengoku. I know. Just go. Sengoku waved his hand impatiently. This Borsellino was indeed a capable hand at handling missions, but he was just too lazy. He wasn't even willing to work unpaid overtime. When he retired, Sengoku would definitely not recommend him for Fleet Admiral. As soon as he finished speaking, a blinding golden light flashed past the window of the Fleet Admiral's office, flying rapidly toward the Sabaody archipelago. Meanwhile, on the Myriad Souls ship, Lin Yi leaned against the ship's railing, the sea breeze blowing the hem of his clothes. He looked at the azure sea in the distance, completely speechless. I say, is it really this hard to do a good deed? He complained wildly to everyone around him. That Marine Rear Admiral, has he lost his mind? We are, after all, a proper Four Emperors pirate crew. He doesn't give us any face at all? He dared to slander us right off the bat and even dared to attack us? Who gave him the courage? Marine hero Garp? Roger stood to the side and merely smiled faintly at the words. The Marines have many people, it's not surprising that some arrogant fellows are hidden among them. He paused and continued, it's just that I really didn't expect that in a place so close to Marineford, there would be such a character. What's so hard to understand about that? Lin Yi curled his lip. To be able to be so arrogant in a location so close to the world government in Marineford, there must be someone backing him up. It's either a high-ranking official within the Marines or those celestial pigs who call themselves gods. Lin Yi narrowed his eyes, his gaze becoming somewhat dangerous. I'd bet it's the latter. Otherwise, that grandson wouldn't need to go head-to-head with our Four Emperors crew for a bunch of slaves. He's probably trying to curry favor with his celestial dragon masters by trying to snatch back goods from their industry chain. After all, in that idiot's mind, the celestial dragons are the masters of the world. Who would dare to disobey? That's why he's so full of confidence. He let out a long sigh. The Myriad Souls ship beneath his feet was cutting through the waves, heading straight for Marine Base 66. Well, looks like we'll have to clash with the Marines again. Chapter 102, Kizaru vs. The Elite 5 Sabaody Archipelago, Marine Base number 66. Rather than a base, it now looked more like a junkyard that had just been hit by a typhoon. Half the building had collapsed, twisted steel and shattered masonry were everywhere on the ground, unconscious Marine soldiers lay scattered about, and the air was thick with the smell of blood and gunpowder. Amidst this mess, the slaves who had recently gained their freedom huddled together, looking at everything before them in terror. But deep in their eyes, there was more concern for those 5 figures. Saviors. A slightly braver middle-aged man spoke with a trembling voice, You should leave quickly. This place is too close to Marineford. They must have received the news already, and reinforcements should be arriving any moment. A younger woman beside him chimed in, her face full of anxiety. Yes. We'll explain to the Marines when they get here. It was that Marine Rear Admiral who acted indiscriminately and insisted on attacking you. You only did it to protect yourselves. Before she could finish, a low growl mixed with pain and anger came from the nearby ruins. Cough, cough, cough. Marine Rear Admiral Scat, who should have been knocked unconscious by number 3's punch, actually struggled to crawl out from the pile of rubble, his face covered in blood. One of his cheeks was highly swollen, showing a strange bluish-purple color, but the madness and malice in his eyes were even more intense than before. He saw the group of slaves defending the Elite Five, gave a sinister smile, and drew a pistol from his waist. A bunch of lowly slaves, he roared, pointing it without hesitation at the woman who had just spoken. How dare you defend pirates, all of you, go to hell. Bang! The gunshot was piercing. The slaves screamed in terror, watching helplessly as fire spat from the muzzle and the bullet whistled with death, heading straight for the woman's face. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Just an instant before the bullet was about to pierce the woman's head, an invisible ripple spread through the air. A transparent air door abruptly appeared in the bullet's flight path. The bullet plunged into the door and vanished without a trace. The next second, above the base, that air door opened again, and the lethal bullet was spat out, shooting straight into the sky. You. Scat's pupils contracted. Number 1 had appeared in front of the slaves at some point, looking at him expressionlessly, his eyes as cold as 2 pieces of eternal ice. You lowly slaves. Scat had completely lost it. He threw away his pistol, drew the saber at his waist, and rushed forward like a madman. Die. All of you, die. Looking for death. Number 3 moved again, his figure turning into a blurry afterimage. Arriving first despite starting later, he instantly blocked Scat's path. His spring-loaded right fist, compressed to the limit, let out a piercing howl as it tore through the air, ready to end this scum's life once and for all. But just as his fist was about to touch the tip of Scat's nose, buzz! A brilliant golden light exploded between the two without any warning. A tall, thin figure wearing a yellow striped suit and a Marine Admiral's Justice cloak appeared out of thin air. He simply raised a hand casually and effortlessly blocked number 3's full power strike that was enough to shatter steel. How scary that iconic, lazy tone with its long, drawn-out ending caused number 3's pupils to instantly shrink to the size of pinpricks. Kizaru. Scat was stunned at first, but then his face was replaced by wild joy. Like a drowning man catching a straw, he scrambled over and cried out his accusations to the Elite Five. Admiral Kizaru. Admiral Kizaru, you finally arrived. I am Rear Admiral Scat, the commander of Base 66. These bastards. These fanatics from the 10,000 Souls pirates suddenly attacked our marine base indiscriminately. Quickly. Capture them and avenge our fallen comrades. On Kizaru's eternally vulgar face, his laziness receded slightly. He glanced at Scat, then scanned the tragic scene in the base, his brow furrowing imperceptibly. After confirming that old monsters like Roger and Redfield were not present, his gaze behind the lenses finally fell upon the Elite Five. Oh, he drawled, his tone carrying a hint of dangerous questioning. You 10,000 Souls pirates, are you openly challenging the justice of our Marines? Or do you think we Marines can no longer do anything to you, that you dare to act so recklessly? Before he even finished speaking, Kizaru's figure instantly turned into a shower of flickering points of light and vanished from the spot. Number 3's observation hockey sent out frantic warnings, but he had no time to react at all. Time seemed to slow down. He could only watch helplessly as Kizaru's figure rematerialized beside him. That right leg, enveloped in golden light and carrying world-destroying power, enlarged infinitely in his pupils like a slow-motion video. Watch out! Number 1's roar had only just sounded. Bang! Kizaru's lightspeed kick landed squarely on number 3's face. Number 3 couldn't even let out a scream. Like being hit head-on by a high-speed train, his sole body instantly distorted and deformed, turning into a cannonball that flew backward. With a thunderous crash, he smashed through half of a remaining building, sending dust billowing into the sky. Bastard! You're asking for it. The remaining 4 were instantly enraged, all assuming offensive stances. Gwa! Number 5's massive body in devil frog form leaped up, crashing down toward the top of Kizara's head like a small mountain, intending to crush him into meat paste. Kizaru didn't even lift his head, just lazily glanced up at the giant shadow above. Speed is power, swish. He turned into a flash of light again and vanished instantly, reappearing instead above number 5's head in midair. While number 5 was still wondering where his target had gone, a terrifying force like Mount Tai pressing down came from above. Bang! Kizaru kicked down hard. Number 5's massive body was kicked straight out of the air like a falling meteor, smashing a giant crater into the ground. Don't even think about it. Seeing number 5 in danger, number 2 and number 4 attacked simultaneously from the left and right, cutting off all of Kizaru's evasion routes. But Kizaru simply performed an easy turn in the air, effortlessly dodging their pincer attack with a posture as casual as taking a stroll. On the other side, number 1 had already used his ability to transfer the injured number 3 out of the ruins. Having taken a light speed kick head-on, number 3 felt like his entire soul body was about to fall apart. But he still forced himself to stand up, his eyes bloodshot, staring fixedly at Kizaru in the air. Damn it! The springs in his feet kept compressing, and compressing further, until they reached a critical point. Boom! A deep pit exploded in the ground as number 3 shot up like a shell from a gun, soaring into the sky toward Kizaru, who was currently fighting number 2 and number 4. In midair, his spring-loaded right arm also began to charge frantically, layers of muscle compressed to the extreme. Get down here! A punch was thrown. Kizaru finally turned his head, showing a slightly serious expression for the first time. He crossed his arms in front of him. Boom! A terrifying shockwave exploded in midair, forming a visible ring of white air. How scary! Kizaru was blown back several meters by this punch, but his mouth still held that punchable, lazy tone. You guys from the 10,000 Souls Pirates, each and every one of you, is like a monster. While saying how scary, his defense remained airtight. Number 3's life-risking strike failed to cause any substantial damage. As number 3 continued to charge up for another attack. Gwa! Just then, number 5 also crawled out of the ruins in the giant crater. He crouched on the ground, lowering his body in a stance similar to the toad skill. With a sudden leap, his massive head turned into a battering ram, slamming hard toward Kizaru's back. However, it was as if Kizaru had eyes in the back of his head. Just as number 5's headbutt was about to hit, he turned into a flash of light again and vanished instantly. Oh no! Number 3 and number 5 both realized something was wrong. But it was too late. Having lost their target, the two slammed into each other with great force in midair. Bang! With a dull thud, number 3 and number 5 each took a heavy blow from the other. Screaming, they both fell and crashed onto the nearby building ruins, unable to move for a moment. Number 2 and number 4 looked at Kizaru hovering in the air, their expressions grave to the extreme. It's over! Kizaru crossed his hands in front of his chest. Countless golden points of light gathered in his palms, emitting a terrifying energy that made one's heart race. Yasukani no Magatama. The next second, countless destructive light bullets, like a torrential downpour, shot out from his hands, covering the entire area below. At the critical moment, number 1's figure instantly appeared in front of everyone, and he pushed his hands forward. Open door. Buzz. An air door even larger than a city gate opened out of thin air, like a giant abyss mouth, swallowing all of that world-destroying rain of light. On the other side, on the sea surface several kilometers away, another air door quietly opened. Boom 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 boom. Countless light bullets poured out from the door, all smashing into the ocean. In an instant, giant holes were blasted into the sea surface, and the resulting tidal waves rose over 100 meters high. That's it for today. Meet you in next part.